All right, Your Honor, we are all here. So if you want to take it back, and I will call the roll when you're ready. Let me know. Thank you.
Okay, let me just make sure we get all the videos working. Mr. Weiss in San Diego, there we go. Okay. All right. So we will go on the record, and then President O, if you could do a quorum again.
Okay. Maria, are you here?
I'm sorry, one moment. It just took a second. We are on the record.
Okay. Sorry. Go for it.
No problem. We are on the record before the Board of Pharmacy, Department of Consumer Affairs, State of California. President O, please call the board members to identify themselves.
Maria Serpa? Here. Jesse Crowley?
Jesse Crowley, present.
Jose de la Paz?
Present.
Thank you. Kula Koenig?
Present.
Thank you. Ricardo Sanchez?
Present.
Thank you. And Jason Wise?
I'm here.
Thank you, Jason. We miss you here in Sacramento, and then I am here. All right, Your Honor, back to you.
Thank you, President O. We have a quorum of the board present. My name is Jessica Wall. I'm an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings, and I will be presiding over this matter. Right now, we are here in the matter of the petition for early termination of probation filed by Amar Rajav Lunagaria, agency case numbers 5991-6205, OAH case number 2022060203. May I please take the appearance of the Deputy Attorney General?
Good afternoon. I'm Deputy Attorney General Nicole Trauma. I'm appearing on behalf of the people of the state of California under Government Code Section 11522.
Thank you. And we have Ms. Johnson here representing the petitioner. Ms. Johnson, could you please state your appearance on the record?
Yes, good afternoon. Lindsay Johnson on behalf of petitioner Amar Lunagaria, who is present via WebEx.
Thank you very much. Dr. Lunagaria, could you please state and spell your name for the record?
Sure. Amar Lunagaria. First name is A-M-A-R. Last name is L-U-N-A-G-A-R-I-A.
Thank you, Dr. Lunagaria. So you're represented by counsel, so I'm not going to give you the full spiel, but we will begin with Ms. Trauma presenting the petition packet and a summary of the background in this matter.
Good afternoon. We're here today on a petition for early termination of probation. The underlying accusation is based on petitioner's conviction on January 25th, 2017 for driving with a blood alcohol concentration of 0.08% or more. The accusation alleged he was convicted of a substantially related crime, dangerous use of alcohol, and conviction for more than one alcohol-related offense. The court assessed petitioner's BAC at 0.18%, which is over twice the legal limit. He was previously convicted of the same offense in 2013. His application for a pharmacist license was also denied for the same conduct. Effective March 15th, 2018, petitioner's intern pharmacist license was revoked. The revocation was stayed and he was placed on probation for 5 years. It was further ordered that upon passage of the licensing exams, he would be issued a pharmacist license subject to the same terms and conditions. Petitioner was issued his pharmacist license on June 11, 2018, and his intern license expired on May 31st, 2018. Petitioner has been compliant with his probation. He has reported to the board on a quarterly basis. He's paid all costs. He's paid probation monitoring costs. He successfully participated and completed the Pharmacist Recovery Program, or PRP, on December 15th, 2021. He participated in random screening. He identified and worked with a professional to monitor and coordinate prescription use, and he completed an ethics course. Petitioner is requesting to terminate probation early, and with his instant petition, he submitted continuing education certificates. He submitted 8 letters of recommendation, all of which have been verified. He also submitted a personal statement. Additional CE documentation was received after the filing of the petition. Those supplemental documents were uploaded to the Office of Administrative Hearings and were also sent out to the individual board members for your consideration today. I'd now like to mark as Exhibit 1 the petition packet, which includes the petition and all of the related documents, the notice of hearing and the memo to the board, and the underlying decision and order, and in addition, those additional CE documentation that was received after the petition. The board members and petitioner have all been provided with a copy of the same set of exhibits as has counsel. The redacted petition has been uploaded to the OAH system, and it was Bates labeled AGO 001 through AGO 191. The people also filed a request for a protective order to seal the confidential records relating to petitioner's substance abuse treatment. Those documents are at AGO 38 through AGO 74. We request that admit Exhibit 1 and that you issue a protective order to seal those confidential records. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sharma. Ms. Johnson, do you have any objection to admission of Exhibit 1?
No objection, Your Honor.
Thank you. Exhibit 1 will be admitted for all purposes. I will also issue a protective order regarding pages 38 through 74 about the substance abuse treatment. So at this time, Ms. Johnson, if you'd like to begin your case.
Thank you. I'll start with a very brief opening because, as I imagine, the board is most interested in hearing from petitioner himself. As was just outlined, petitioner first obtained his license as a pharmacist in 2018 on a probationary license. Since that time, a little over 4 years, petitioner has established a thriving and professional career. Not only is his career, but his petition today supported unwaveringly by those who know him, but equally important, those who have worked with him, who have seen day in and day out not only his commitment to sobriety, but also his commitment to this profession. As was just outlined, petitioner has been fully compliant with his board probation. He has not only completed various angles, but some of which he has completed early, including his cost recovery and, was noted, his pharmacist recovery program. There have been no concerns to petitioner's knowledge or to anyone's knowledge that petitioner represents a danger or any evidence of relapse since his last conviction, which occurred a little over 5.5 years ago. Petitioner has come before this board for a second time, the first time, of course, being his statement of issues and accusation, and this time presents a completely different picture. Somebody who has grown, who has learned through probation, and who has served the community and the public with his license. He has hopefully demonstrated to this board that not only can he be trusted, but he has actually added to the profession, that he has served it wisely, and that he will continue to do so, not only through his own education, but through the education he has sought voluntarily since gaining his license, and through the community that he has sought to protect. But as mentioned, I imagine the board is most interested in hearing from petitioner himself. So at this point, I would ask Your Honor, if you would be so kind as to swear petitioner in so that we could ask him some questions.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Dr. Lunagaria, could you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
I do, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson, you may begin.
Thank you. Good afternoon. How old are you?
I am 29 years old.
And are you currently employed?
I am. I'm currently employed as a staff pharmacist at Indiana Pharmacy.
And can you please briefly describe for us what you do as a staff pharmacist at Indiana Pharmacy?
Outside of the general pharmacist roles, verifying prescriptions, counseling patients, receiving new prescriptions, counseling patients, all the regular pharmacist roles I do perform. I also am involved in certain specialties at this location. So we treat harder to treat patient populations, such as the HIV and Hep C patient population, mental health population, and then also the substance abuse and recovery population within Riverside County and San Bernardino County.
And in order to treat these populations, do you have any additional education or training?
I do. So specifically for the HIV population, I in 2020 sat for the exam to be certified as a HIV pharmacist by the American Academy of HIV Medicine. and I received that certification in January of 2021, which is effective until December of 2023.
And you mentioned that you sat for the examination. What, if anything else, did that certification entail?
It required several hours of studying and extensive knowledge of understanding therapeutics within the HIV population, interactions, other medications that, and also supplements and other things that could not interact with medications, certain comorbidities that may be associated with the treatment choices, and then also completing several CE hours. And then after all of that was completed, there was an examination that had to be completed and passed successfully, I think with a 80% or more to be compliant and then to be granted that certificate.
And how long have you been working at Indiana Pharmacy with this population that you outlined?
The store opened in January of 2021. So I've actually been there since the very beginning, almost pretty much since day zero. I actually assisted in starting the location from scratch. So it was a great learning opportunity for me and also allowed me to cater to these harder to treat patient populations that I am passionate about caring for and serving them in my highest capacity.
And to the best of your knowledge, have there been any complaints raised during your time at Indiana Pharmacy?
There have not.
Is Indiana aware that you are petitioning today for the early termination of your probation?
They are.
And to the best of your knowledge, are they supportive of that petition or that request?
They are, yeah, to the best of my knowledge.
And what gives you that impression?
So I actually worked for the same owner prior to my employment at Indiana Pharmacy at another location that is in Norco, which is a neighboring city. And I worked for him at that location since August of 2018. My employment there started as just volunteer hours, 10 hours a week, until he had some confidence in me that I was a competent pharmacist and able to perform my duties. And over the 2 years, or a little over 2 years that I served there, I had the opportunity to work extended hours, work more hours, and then have reduced supervision as well through the board. All of that then led to his confidence in me to start a second location under him and to be able to cater towards my passions and the patient populations that I am specialized in and care about more so. So him just giving me that opportunity alone makes me believe that the company and the owner is very supportive of my petition today.
And I believe you mentioned the location, but what was the name of the first pharmacy?
Pharmco Drugs.
And during your time at Pharmco, were there any, to your knowledge, complaints or concerns raised?
No, not that I'm aware of.
We are obviously here because you are on board probation, correct?
That is correct.
And we certainly heard a very brief outline, but can you explain to us, based on your understanding, why you are on board probation?
I had 2 convictions for driving under the influence, one in 2013 and one in 2016, both of which, one was before I was even an intern pharmacist, the second being after I held a license from the Board of Pharmacy as an intern. And when I applied for my pharmacist license, it was denied, and then I entered into a stipulated settlement as a result of my 2 misfortunate decisions that I made back in 2013 and 2016.
Do you understand why the board would have concerns licensing you when you have 2 criminal convictions for driving under the influence?
I do. I do now, especially, when I first entered into the settlement, and even when I was first served the accusation, I was very angry, very not understanding of, why whatever was happening. But over the past 4 years, I've come to understand, and I realized that holding a license that serves people, it's not a right just because I finished pharmacy school and graduated some exams does not give me the right to hold a license. You know, serving the people, it's a privilege that I have. So having the history that I did have with 2 convictions, and then serving the public, if I'm a danger to the public in any way, not just in my profession, but in my personal life as well, that would be of concern. And that's the reason why I believe that the board had put me under probation in the first place.
Your probation and your disciplinary action stems from driving under the influence convictions. Are you currently sober?
I am.
And do you have a sobriety date?
I do. It's February 10th of 2018.
How, if at all, do you maintain your sobriety?
I have a very extensive support group. I formed this support group through my health support group when I was in Maximus, also through friends and family. And then I have been a part of AA as well since the first DUI, and then more actively since the second DUI. I've worked all the steps, and I've learned several tools through AA and through health support group to help me maintain my sobriety.
Your sobriety date and your last conviction date do not line up. Is that correct?
That is correct.
What, if anything, prompted your sobriety date in February of 2018?
That was the day and the decision that I made at that time to just, you know, clean everything up, to do whatever it takes to stand on my own 2 feet, and to give my all to the profession that I've wanted to be a part of. You know, I've wanted to be a pharmacist since the 7th grade, which I don't know any other 7th grader that wanted to be a pharmacist. So making the decisions and the mistakes that I made, and then having to go through, you know, being given the opportunity to just do that, and for the board to even consider giving me a license, that all tied into around my 25th birthday to just decide that I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure that I clean everything up and get back on my own 2 feet.
And in cleaning everything up, you mentioned you returned to AA and started working the steps. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Have you since completed the steps?
I have twice actually.
And is there a step or steps that you found most helpful in your journey?
2 steps actually. So step 1 was, you know, the very first step of understanding that I was powerless over alcohol. When I first entered AA, I had this notion that, you know, I can't be powerless over alcohol. My entire life didn't revolve around alcohol. It wasn't, you know, waking up and starting with the bottle. That was not who I was. But that all of those things were associated with denial, and I strongly believe that working through that first step with a sponsor and understanding that, you know, in those moments I was powerless over alcohol because I had made decisions, terrible decisions, that were fueled by alcohol. Getting out of that denial and into that acceptance stage of the first step was very important for me, and it was sort of a perspective shift. And then getting to step 5 was where my life momentum shift happened. I've always been somebody that tries to take care of my problems on my own. I always try to internalize things and find solutions on my own. So having the opportunity to open up about my mistakes and accept my mistakes, not only for myself, but then to another human being who I just met, who is my sponsor, but somebody that I just met for, you know, a month or a few weeks, having to openly admit all of my mistakes and kind of share that with him and step out of my own self helped me shift my focus from me to accept other perspectives in my own life. And, you know, I had a lot of guilt and shame and self-pity at the time, but being able to openly talk about that with somebody else, again, that I barely knew and was not within my circle of family and friends, helped me step outside of myself and ultimately be accepting of the mistakes that I had made and learn to move forward from them.
And you just mentioned it, but let me ask it outright. Did you work with a sponsor through this process?
I did.
As a part of your board probation, you had to complete a pharmacist recovery program. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And I know we've talked about what you learned with AA and the AA steps. What, if anything, did you learn through the pharmacist recovery program?
A lot of lessons, actually. So when I first entered the pharmacist recovery program, I was, like I said, terrified, but also angry. And anything that was told to me, I took it all in the wrong way, that I couldn't work. I had to do certain things like drug screen, which I was completely okay with, but the not being able to work, having to wait until somebody else said, I'm okay to work now. All of those concepts were foreign to me, but it didn't come until a few months into the program where I was able to step outside of myself and really understand why I was doing the things that I was doing, and being able to work through that before being able to work and then offer, whatever I was offering to other people around me, having that impact on other people. Working through that through the recovery program was extremely beneficial because it allowed me to take a pause in my life. I always lived like a faster paced lifestyle, always planning for the next thing. And being in the recovery program, all of that stopped like on that very day. And it was very structured, very rigid. And that allowed me to create a base and a foundation for my own life that I probably wouldn't have learned, if there were any other circumstance. If I didn't go through the Maximus Recovery Program, I wouldn't be the person that I am today, and I wouldn't have the foundation and the base that I have to comfortably stand on today. So it was definitely a growth opportunity rather than just a set of consequences. And that's how I lived through it for the last 4 years now.
Obviously, Maximus released you, so presumably we
Mhm.
can all draw inferences from that. But to the best of your knowledge, were there any concerns raised regarding your sobriety or your compliance during your time at Maximus?
None that I'm aware of.
And you had to drug and alcohol test, correct?
That is correct.
At any point in time, were you ever made aware of any positive test?
None that I'm aware of.
Now, you are approximately a little over 4 years into a 5-year probationary period with the board, correct?
That is correct.
And you mentioned that that was entered into via stipulated settlement, correct?
That is correct.
So at the time you signed that settlement, did you understand that that was agreeing to, in exchange for the license, a 5-year probationary period?
I did.
Now, the board has upheld their end of the settlement. They've granted you the license for the last 4+ years. Why should you not be required to uphold your end of the settlement, which was 5 years probation?
Like I said, first of all, I'd like to thank the board for even giving me the opportunity to obtain my license and to be a part of this profession. But I feel as though now in my career and in my practice, I've hit certain limitations that are part of the restrictions that I have for probation. I want to utilize my license to my full extent, especially for the patients that I serve, especially for the underserved population that's within my community and all around me. And I want to be able to offer the most that I can, free and unrestricted. Right now, I have limitations on the numbers of hours I can work, the number of places or sites that I can work at, and having a supervising pharmacist for certain things like outreach events. I've been approached several times within my community to hold outreach events, but due to scheduling conflicts and other things where I can't have a supervising pharmacist there, I have to turn those things down. I've also been asked to have, on-call hours and weekend hours at the current site, all of which I can't do because I'm limited to just the 40 hours of practice. So I'm very comfortable, I'm very grateful that I even have the license in the first place, but I'm also very comfortable in the growth that I've had over the last 4 years. And I think it's time for me now to offer back to the people and to my community everything that I can possibly offer as a pharmacist, and whether that entails working the extended hours or multiple practice locations, being on call, all of these things are important to me and for my patients. And so I'd like to offer that back. And like I said, I work in a couple different specialties, mental health and HIV and substance abuse. These are all intertwined disease states, and more importantly, they don't wait. These disease states, they don't wait to manifest for somebody in just a 9 to 5 position. If a provider is on call and he needs a medication for a patient at 9 p.m., I want to be able to offer that to the patients and to the provider so that they can treat the patient adequately. And right now I'm a little limited by that, so that's mainly why I'm here today, to be able to practice with my license to the full extent.
What reassurances can you offer to the board that if the board is not monitoring your sobriety, that you will remain sober?
Like I said, I have a very strong support group in place. I have family, friends, my employer, everyone that is well aware of my circumstances, the mistakes that I've made and the things that I've put myself through. I am more than comfortable in my own skin. My main reason for even consuming alcohol in my past was in social environments and experiences, all of which I still am a part of, but have no inclination to use alcohol or touch alcohol within those settings. I'm more than comfortable in my own skin. I'm not susceptible to that peer pressure anymore that I was when I was a lot younger. And just with that, and with the tools that I've put in place that I've learned through AA, through health support group, and through my career and practice, I'm very confident that I no longer have any inclination to use alcohol and can maintain my sobriety.
Is there anything else you want the board to know before they ask questions?
I just want to thank the board, for when I came into this entire thing back in 2018, I was extremely terrified and frankly pretty angry. And through my past 4 years, I've learned that, like I said, holding this license is a privilege, it's not a right. So for the board to even take a chance on me back then, and to then allow me to grow into the pharmacist that I am today, I'm more than grateful. And like I mentioned, when I was younger, I was a naive person. I thought life could be lived without consequences. But through these past 4 years, I've learned that that's not the case, and I was always driven by my own success. But through these past 4 years of serving patients and my community, I've really learned that my own success comes as a byproduct of what I can do and offer back to my community and to my patients. And so that's why I come before all of you today to petition for early termination, to be able to utilize my license for its full extent and to be able to offer everything that I possibly can to my community and to my patients and to the people. So thank you again for taking the time today to listen to my petition, and that's it.
Thank you. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Ms. Trauma, would you like to ask some?
Yes, please. Dr. Luna Garia, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Great. How old were you when you were first convicted of DUI in 2013?
I was 20 years old.
And you were involved in an accident, right?
That is correct.
And there was property damage and your vehicle was damaged?
That is correct.
You could have hurt someone or yourself?
I could have. Yeah, I'm very grateful that no one was injured, but it could have been a lot worse.
Now, you had to complete all of the first offender DUI program after that first conviction, is that correct?
That is correct.
Isn't a huge aspect of that program focus on why you shouldn't drink and drive?
It is.
But then you did it again in 2016, correct?
Unfortunately, yes. I did have a second conviction in 2016, and I repeated the mistake that I made in 2013 again.
How old were you in 2016?
believe I was 23 when it, yeah, 23.
Okay. So would you say that the gravity of your actions didn't sink in until after that second DUI?
That is correct.
Why do you think it took 2 DUIs for you to wake up?
The again, from after the first one in 2013, I feel like I was still in denial. The consequences were bad, but I didn't accept the mistakes that I had made then, and I thought that, oh, this is an isolated incident and it's something that I can overcome and I'll be able to be, normal and have no issues. So I had that mentality after the first one, and I was very cautious, but not cautious enough, and I didn't make enough life-changing decisions to alter my behaviors until that second one in 2016.
Okay. But you did continue to drink after the second DUI, correct?
Um, on a handful of occasions, again, after the second one in 2016, I was still in that denial stage. I want to make it clear I was never intoxicated to the point of making any terrible decisions like driving under the influence. There's a handful of times that I did consume an alcoholic beverage, mainly around social events or celebratory milestones like graduation or New Year's, but that was about it. And then on my sobriety date in February was the day I made that decision. No more.
Okay. So you indicated in your petition that you thought that this might be arrogance on your part. Do you still feel arrogant?
No, I actually feel very humble. My two decisions, my two mistakes were fueled definitely by arrogance. Like I mentioned earlier, I thought life could be lived with no consequences, but that's definitely not the case. And so now going through the recovery program, going through the steps, having all the tools that I do have now over the past 4 years, it's really brought an overwhelming sense of humility on my life instead of arrogance.
And you said your date of sobriety was February 10th, 2018, correct?
That is correct.
And that was actually after you signed the stipulated settlement, agreeing to go on probation and agreeing to abstain, correct?
I'm not 100% sure the exact date. I think it was in February. I know I entered the stipulated settlement in March, but I
So,
can't remember the exact date.
so it went into effect in March, is my understanding. I'm looking at the stipulated settlement here at in the petition packet. And it appears to me that it was signed by you on or about January 5th of 2018. Does that sound correct at all?
Okay, yeah.
So at the time that you signed the stip, were you still using alcohol?
My last conscious drink was in December of 2017, and then in February of 2018, I had one sip of alcohol on that day, on the 9th of February.
Now, on your petition, you when they asked if you had ever been habitually intemperate in the use of alcohol, you marked no. Why did you mark no to that question?
I've never been habitually using alcohol. I've never used it to the extent where it became something of a habit. Both of my incidents were, I don't want to say isolated because it's the same mistake repeated again. But both mistakes were isolated uses of alcohol to an extent in which I was no longer able to make, a decision that was in the best interest of not harming myself or anyone else. So with those two instances, I they were not the rest of my use of alcohol. I guess was not habitual. So that's why I marked no for that specific answer.
Okay. Are you saying though that you only used alcohol excessively on these two particular occasions where you happened to get caught?
No, these are just incidents where used alcohol, and then I made terrible decisions after that, mainly to drink and to drive. I've used alcohol. I wouldn't necessarily classify in excess, but I've used alcohol in the point of more than one or two drinks, but in instances where I was not driving or anything of that nature. And this was all within my time in college and in school.
Okay. So do you see yourself continuing with AA after probation is over?
I will chime into meetings here and there if I need to. My support group is more outside of AA. It's more with other professionals, and it's more with family and friends. They're more than well aware of my situation and more than supportive of the decisions that I've made and the changes that I've made into my life. And then I also try to give back the lessons that I've learned in AA and recovery through my care for patients, specifically in the substance abuse and recovery sector. I have a lot of patients that are within the substance abuse and are going through recovery right now. And so I try to be their healthcare professional, be their pharmacist, and also help them, in terms of counseling and things like that, sort of through the 12 steps, but in my own way with these patients. So that's kind of where I put more of my focus in instead of just attending AA meetings.
Okay. You finished your PRP program in December, is that correct?
Correct.
Congratulations on that. That's an accomplishment.
Thank you.
What part of the PRP program did you find that made the biggest impact in your life?
The entire program was it the last 4 years of being in the PRP program, it's been a momentum shift. It's been a very humbling experience for me. Like I said, I always thought, I could live life the way I wanted to. I wouldn't have to necessarily be told what to do. But I realized over the past 4 years that it wasn't me. I wasn't being told what to do. I agreed to the terms and I agreed that this is what I had to do to practice in the field that I wanted to be in. But the opportunity that the PRP program gave me to take a pause on that lifestyle that I lived and to really dissect each individual component of my life, why I made the mistakes that I made, why I think the way I think, why I always have this inclination to control the environment around me. All of those things weren't exposed to me until I was part of the recovery program. But the single biggest impact, I think, of the recovery program was attending those health support group meetings with other professionals, whether it be pharmacists, dentists, DOs. There were people of all walks of life, all that held a license and all that were in similar situations that I was in. So gaining the support of my peers in the health support group, that was my rock throughout the entire program.
Are you ever going to drink and drive again?
No, I can't predict the future. I wish I could, but right now on this day, yeah, I have no inclination to drink and drive or drink, period.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Thank you, Ms. Trauma. We now go to the board. President O, could you please poll the board members for their questions?
Sure. We're going to start with Kula. Kula, do you have any questions for Dr. Lunagaria?
No questions.
Okay. Thank you, Kula. Ricardo?
Yeah, no questions.
Thank you, Ricardo. Jason?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you, Jason. All right. Dr. Maria Serpa?
Yes, just one quick question for Dr. Lunagaria, sorry about that. It looks like, according to my calculations, you have less than 1 year left in probation. And you did answer the question as to why you are wanting to terminate probation early. But if you could just speak to that again and what this will get you for, I think I calculated right, is less than 1 more year.
Is the question why I want to, effectively terminate probation earlier past that year, before that year? I've through my time at my current position at Indiana Pharmacist, I've been asked by several providers and several clinics that we work with to hold outreach events, to have extended hours. We service a couple mental health urgent cares where patients come in overnight and they need medications at 5, 6, 7 a.m. Or sometimes 8, 9, or 10 p.m. These are opportunities for patient care that I have to unfortunately say no to right now. So we started servicing a lot of these facilities throughout the past year, and I want to have the ability to not say no anymore. That way I can provide care for these patients when these providers require the service that we offer.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Jessie Crowley?
Hi, thank you so much for coming in front of the board. It's not easy to do. I do have a few questions for clarification.
Sure.
You said you're currently a staff pharmacist, is that correct? And
That is
is that a
correct.
paid position?
It is.
Are you currently working the full 40 hours per week?
I am.
So if your probation is lifted, then you would want to work more than 40 hours. Is that what I'm getting at?
Correct. Yeah, I'd
Mhm.
like to be able to offer that service, to be able to work more than 40 hours. I've always been a person that liked to work, no matter how hard it was. It keeps me busy and keeps me grounded. So having just that limitation of the 40 hours a week, it puts a limitation on myself and for my clients and my patients. So I'd like to expand that. I feel like I'm comfortable right now in my position and in my practice to be able to now offer that.
Perfect, thank you. My next question is clarification on some of your CEs. I noticed that a lot of the CEs occurred on the same dates. So for example, there were 20 courses, I believe, from August 29th of 2021, which were each about 2 hours, if I'm not mistaken. I see a similar thing on April 19th, 2020, where there were 8 courses varying between 0.75 to 2 hours. And then on March 31st, 2020, there was 11 courses. I just wanted clarification to see if these CEs were part of a certification program.
Some of them were. What I usually do when I do CEs is I'll look at the course, I'll kind of print them out and then go through them on print form, and then print out the exam as well. That way I can kind of study the material and then aggregate everything and then submit it all. I think the recent one was part of a certification course for opioid use. And then the ones in the past, there was a few aggregated certification courses that I was required to do for my HIV certification as well.
Perfect. And then the last question I have is just in regards to your sobriety. So you mentioned in terms of a support system, you have friends and family, and that you don't lean on AA as much anymore. I just wanted to get an idea of other parts of your daily routine that help you maintain your sobriety outside of the support systems.
Yeah, so being in the pharmacist recovery program, it also allowed me not just to take a pause, but to have a structure, a daily routine. So my daily routine right now, I wake up at 4:15 a.m. I get into the gym by 5. I work with a trainer on some days and without on other days. So that really gets me started for the day. Then I go to work from 9 to about 5:30, come home, eat dinner. I love to cook, so I'll make some food and then I wind down for the day and then go to sleep. Just having that grounded routine every day, day in and day out, Monday through Sunday, really helps keep me grounded and, keep me sober. And I don't really have to think about anything else because it's just a daily routine that I've become accustomed to. And that fits for me. And it's a perfect balance between work and other activities.
Great. Thank you, and congratulations on your sobriety. You've done a terrific job over the last few years.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jose de la Paz, any questions or comments?
Just one question. What was the last time you consumed alcohol?
February 9th, 2018.
Okay, thank you. No more questions.
Thank you. I just have a question about just your work.
Sure.
So at this point, are you like a full-time staff pharmacist? Are there any other pharmacists that works with you at the pharmacy?
No, I'm the full-time staff pharmacist there.
Okay. So if the probation were to be lifted, would you be PIC? Would you want to be PIC, or would they ask you to be a PIC?
I've considered it. I will see, and I'll discuss with the owner. If I'm granted early termination, if that's something that would ultimately ease his burden, because he does own another store. If that's something that I'm interested in, if that he would like to offer me, then it's something that I will consider in the future.
Okay. Is he the PIC at this point currently?
He is.
Okay. And the new pharmacy, would you consider possibly buying the pharmacy or being in the ownership of the pharmacy?
I've given it thought. I haven't considered it. Again, this is something that I would have to discuss with him once if I am granted termination early, or whenever, whatever his plans are. If he wants to divest it or if he wants to retire. I'm not sure exactly what his plans are. If it does come up, it's definitely something that I'd be open to discussing.
Okay. And the pharmacy is an independent pharmacy that work with clinics to provide HIV medications. Is that my understanding?
Yeah, so we work with several clinics, and then we work with the county as well for a lot of their mental health services and their recovery and substance abuse clinics as well.
Well, thank you for your service, and I admire your story and all the letters you've gotten. So good luck, and I'm taking back to you, Your Honor.
Thank you, President O. So I'd like to check with Ms. Johnson, just to confirm on the record, all of the documents we have in Exhibit 1 are all of the documents that will be submitted for the petition, correct?
Correct, yes.
Thank you. And there are no other witnesses other than Dr. Lunagaria, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. So at this time, Ms. Johnson, if you'd like to give any closing remarks or have your client testify to anything else he thinks would benefit his petition.
Thank you. I'd actually like both, if you don't mind. I have a few follow-up questions for him based on questions, and then a brief closing remark.
That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Linger, we talked briefly, or you discussed briefly with Ms. Trauma, your criminal court matter. I don't believe I asked, are you still under any criminal court obligations?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And your stipulated settlement with the board was ordered on February 13th of 2018, effective in March of 2018. Did you ever drink after your stipulated settlement was ordered?
No.
And you mentioned that you have a wide support group. Would you continue to check in with that support group moving forward, even if you are not regularly attending AA?
Well, I do on a daily basis still to this very day.
Yeah. And in your petition, when you marked no to habitual alcohol use, you actually discussed your no answer in your petition itself in the narrative. And you stated, while I do not believe it was habitual use, I refuse to put myself in a position where that could become habitual, and I now enforce a zero tolerance policy towards alcohol. If your probation is terminated early, would you keep that zero tolerance policy toward alcohol?
I will.
Yeah. Your Honor, I have no further questions, but if everyone would be so gracious, a brief closing.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. As the board is certainly well aware, the purpose of these proceedings is not to punish a practitioner. It's to protect the public. Case law has told us that, absolutely, but common sense tells us that as well. We are asking the public to trust healthcare providers, and in order to do that, we have to have healthcare providers that we trust. Certainly when he first applied for licensure and when he held his intern permit, there were questions of trust, questions of judgment, and questions, quite frankly, over whether or not at the time petitioner could be a safe pharmacist. I recognize that. I imagine the board recognizes that. But perhaps most importantly, in his testimony today, Mr. Lunagaria recognizes that. He's articulated for the board, hopefully, to the best of not only his ability, but to the board's understanding of the reasons why he was placed on a stipulated settlement, that there were questions of judgment, there were questions of sobriety, and whether or not he could be a safe practitioner. In our opinion, a lot of time, though, has passed since that moment. And it's not just a lot of time, it is a little over 4 years. But more importantly, it's how that time was used. And we believe it was used wisely. Since entering into a stipulated settlement, there have been absolutely no concerns, not only of alcohol use, but concerns in general over who Mr. Lunagaria is as a person, but equally important, who he is as a pharmacist. When we look at sobriety, we can look at the fact that he has completed the pharmacist recovery program. Certainly not an easy program, nor a short program. It has required him to not only go through the steps of Maximus, but to also go through a personal introspection to see not only what he can do to change in the future, but the role he played in his actions in the past. It's not until one confronts the past, obviously, that they can change for the future. As a result, he has come through on the other side, not only a sober provider, but more importantly, an honest provider, one that hopefully the board can see as trustworthy. In order to view this, we need to look no further than his testimony today, and not only his testimony, but the candid nature in which he shared with this board. In particular, we can look at a sobriety date. Certainly no one on the board is monitoring when his last drop of alcohol was prior to his stipulated settlement. Certainly the board has been monitoring it since then, but he could have essentially given any date, but he didn't, because he swore to tell the truth. And ultimately, he's honest. He's honest with not only his history, but he's honest with what he did and what he needs to do in the future to make sure it doesn't happen again. Here is somebody who does not take the easy route or the convenient route when seeking for licensure. He offered up that sobriety date without prompting because ultimately he is able to look back at his past and also use that to fuel his future. We can look at more than that, though. We can look at the testimony from those who know him through his letters of reference that were all verified by board staff that wrote not only glowing reviews of him as a person, but who talked about their understanding of the situation, who talked about their understanding of why he is on probation and what changes he has made since they have known him. This is day-to-day interaction that individuals have had and changes that they have seen. And case law tells us that that is perhaps some of the most compelling evidence. In Preston versus State Bar of California, the court held that in reaching a fair conclusion of the question of reformation, the favorable testimony of acquaintances, neighbors, friends, associates, and employees, with reference to their observation of the daily conduct and mode of living of an attorney, in that case the licensee, who has suffered disbarment, should weigh heavily in the scales of justice. And that also makes sense. It's those who see the individual every day that have the greatest insight into who that individual is. And the greatest insight that we have into petitioner is quite simply a person who is dedicated to the profession, dedicated to the community, and dedicated to a sustained change that he has made in his life. He has raised, to our knowledge, backed by board staff in their memorandum with his petition, no concerns to the board during the entire time that he has been on this stipulated settlement, a little over 4 years. He has been compliant, he has been timely, he has completed programs, he has completed Not only those programs, but he has completed additional steps behind them, and he has done everything that has been asked of him. Certainly, compliance with board probation is not enough. It's what we expect of a probationee. So then we turn to the additional steps. In this case, petitioner has sought and achieved additional certification and education, which he has used not only to better himself, but to better his community, which ultimately brings us to why we are here. Somebody who's asking not to get off probation early in order to stop testing or in order to avoid finishing a program. He's already completed it. It's for somebody who's asking to be able to give back to the community with the education that he's obtained in order to help a population in an area that needs particular help. We realize certainly that his probation is, in the grand scheme of life, almost over. And it might be seen as though, well, why not wait a few more months? But what Mr. Lunagaria is asking for here is that in those few more months, he be able to help a population that he's been drawn to. And if we do not see a danger in allowing him to do that, then we allow him, in fact, to actually advance and succeed in a profession that he is so grateful for. As I mentioned at the beginning, certainly these matters are not to punish a practitioner. They're to protect the public, nor are they to rehear prior matters. The stipulated settlement at the time it was issued was the right outcome for what Mr. Lunagaria was presenting in his application. We now look to the petition he's presenting today, though, and ask what the right outcome is there. And it is our hope that the board will agree that the right outcome is early termination. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. So that concludes the petition hearing on this matter. The case is submitted and the record is closed. We are off the record in this matter, and we'll proceed to the next petition. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have the next petitioner present?
Yes, I am present, Your Honor.
Okay. I don't see your camera. I apologize. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. Is there anything we need to address before we begin the next petition? All right. Seeing none. We are on the record before the Board of Pharmacy, Department of Consumer Affairs, State of California, in the matter of the petition for early termination of probation filed by Ruth Mercy Magalit, agency case number 6239, OAH case number 20220609191. My name is Jessica Wall. I'm an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings assigned to preside over this matter. We have a quorum of the Board of Pharmacy present before us today. May I please take the appearance of the Deputy Attorney General?
Good afternoon, Deputy Attorney General Nicole Trauma. I'm appearing on behalf of the people under Government Code Section 11522.
Thank you, Ms. Trauma. And petitioner, I'm not sure I pronounced your name correctly. Is it Dr. Magalit?
It's Miss Magalit.
Magalit. Thank you, Dr.
Yes.
Magalit. Okay.
Yes. Thank you, Your Honor.
Miss, Ms., or Doctor?
Miss Magalit, Doctor. Your Honor.
Okay. All right. I think that was, I know you said Miss and Doctor, so which of the two would you
I'm so
prefer?
sorry, I'm so sorry, Judge. Miss Magalit, because I am not a PharmD graduate.
Understood. Thank you, Ms. Magalit. I appreciate the clarification. May I please have you
Your Honor.
state and spell your name for the record?
Okay, Your Honor. My name is Ruth Mercy S. Magalit. R-U-T as in Tom, H, M as in Mary, E-R-C-Y, S as in Sam for the initial, and then the last name is M as in Mary, A-G-A-L-I-T as in Tom.
Thank you very much, Ms. McGallett. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a background about this proceeding. Here, the board is concerned about the rehabilitation since your license was disciplined. First, we'll have Ms. Trauma introduce the petition package and a summary of the background in this matter. Following that, you'll have an opportunity to testify in support of your petition. I want to remind you that the board has had the benefit of reading your petition materials, so you do not need to restate the items within it. After you provide your testimony, the board and Ms. Trauma will ask you some questions. Following the hearing, the board will be in closed session to deliberate. You will not receive a decision today. It will be mailed in the future. And I see on my side that you went off camera, Ms. McGallett. I want to confirm that you're still with us. Are you there?
I am here, Your Honor.
Okay. Okay. So, Ms. McGallett, do you have any questions about the instructions I provided you?
No, I don't, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. McGallett. So at this time, Ms. Trauma, will you please present the petition summary?
Yes, Your Honor. We're here today on a petition for an early termination of probation. The underlying accusation is based on violations of laws and regulations governing pharmacy, and the violations occurred between 2013 to 2016 when petitioner was a staff pharmacist at Riverwalk Pharmacy. The board's investigations found that petitioner failed to comply with corresponding responsibility, excessively furnished controlled substances, dispensed controlled substances with significant errors, omissions, irregularities, dispensed controlled substance prescriptions written on unauthorized forms, failed to exercise or implement best professional judgment or corresponding responsibility when dispensing controlled substances, gross negligence when dispensing controlled substances, and for unprofessional conduct. And I do want to note at this point that I do not see the petitioner. Don't know if we want to make sure she's still there.
Yes, that's an excellent idea, Ms. Trauma. Thank you. So, Ms. McGallett, I want to make sure that you're with us throughout this hearing. I'm not sure whether your connection might not be strong or if there's something else that is preventing your video from showing constantly, but it's just very important for us that you have the benefit of hearing everything that's being said in this hearing and that we can confirm that you're present. So I see you're back.
Yeah, I think it's just my signal. I did not touch anything in my screen. It still says stop video, and I did not touch that. So I hear everything that you have said, Ms. Trama, and also Judge Wong.
Thank you, Ms. McGallett. So I think the best way for us to proceed, are you using a Wi-Fi signal or cellular signal?
A Wi-Fi signal.
Are you close to the modem or router around where you're getting that Wi-Fi signal?
I don't even know where the router of this house is.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
That's fine, Ms. McGallett. So what I think we can do at this time, since it doesn't sound like we're able to get you closer to where that router would be, is we're just going to keep checking in with you if your video disappears so we know that you're still present. So that might slow us down a little, but I think that might be the best way to resolve this at that time. Does that sound like a doable thing, Ms. McGallett?
Yes, Your Honor, as long as it is acceptable to you. I hope you can still hear me.
Also, our IT folk is telling us if the door is closed, please open the door as well, too.
Okay. So, Ms. McGallett, are you in a room with a closed door?
No. I am in the dining area of the house I am in.
Okay.
It's, yeah,
Well,
so there are no closed doors.
I'm sorry. And I also want to make a note at this point that we can only speak one at a time, and I apologize for interrupting you. In order to have a clear record, one person can speak at a time, and we can't have any overlap. So I think the best thing we can do at this point is just do what we mentioned a little bit earlier and check in with you when your video disappears. That way we can still commence this hearing and give you your chance to talk about your petition. So, Ms. Trauma, was there more that you would like to add?
Yes, Your Honor. So effective on February 27th, 2019, petitioner's pharmacist license was revoked. The revocation was stayed, and she was placed on probation for 6 years, subject to the same terms and conditions. She's been compliant with probation. She has completed remedial education, reported to the board on a quarterly basis, paid all costs, and paid the probation monitoring costs, completed the ethics course, and completed the supervised practice requirement. Petitioner, are you still there?
Yes, I am here, Miss Trauma.
Great. Petitioner told probation for 10 months from February 2019 to August 2019 for 6 months, and again from February 2020 to May 2020 for 4 months. Petitioner is requesting to terminate probation early, and with her instant petition, she's submitted continuing education certificates, 7 letters of recommendation, all of which have been verified, and she also submitted a personal statement. I'd like to mark as Exhibit 1 the petition packet, and includes all the documents I described above that were attached to the petition, the notice of hearing and the memo to the board, and the underlying decision and order. The board members and petitioner have been provided with a copy of the same set of exhibits. The redacted petition was uploaded to the OAH system and base labeled AGO 001 through AGO 119, and we request that it be admitted into evidence. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Trauma. Ms. Magalit, do you have any objection to admitting Exhibit 1 into evidence?
No, I don't, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Magalit. Exhibit 1 will be admitted for all purposes. Okay. So with that, we're going to turn it over to you, Ms. Magalit. Before I can consider your testimony as evidence, I need to swear you in. So can you please raise your right hand? And your video might be a little slow because I don't see you raising it, but I think it might be that okay,
Yes.
we've lost the video.
I am raising my hand right now.
Thank you for that verbal confirmation. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
I do, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Magalit. So I just want to give you a little bit of instruction again that the board has had the opportunity to review your petition, so you don't need to restate anything within it. This is your opportunity to tell the board why you filed this petition and why you believe it should be granted. And with that, you may begin.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Your Honor. Administrative Law Judge Jessica Wall, Deputy Attorney General Nicole Trauma, esteemed President and members of the board. I come before this august body with the utmost gratitude for giving me this immense opportunity to petition for an early termination of my probation. Thank you so much for your time. I come before you truly humbled by the realization that with the great privilege of practicing pharmacy is attached a huge responsibility, first and foremost, to my patients, the public on the whole, as well as to the board. I also come before you now with eyes wide open that despite, I believe, a commendable attitude of respect for authority, that is my previous employer in question, who valued profit over good ethical practice, that there is a higher authority that I should answer to. Please allow me, Your Honor, to give a background with your permission. By the way, do you hear me?
I do hear you, Ms.
Or do you
Magalit.
see me?
Thank
you, Your Honor.
Your video is going in and out, but we're hearing the audio, which is the most important part because that's what we're using to make the transcript here. So while you're testifying, if I can hear your audio, I'm not going to interrupt you to let you know that the video is missing. So as long as the audio is going, I know you're still with us.
Thank you, Your Honor. I own my errors, my negligence, and my misconduct, but I offer the following not as excuses, but as background to why there was a lack of focus on my part towards the proper and ethical practice of pharmacy on my behalf. I was already hearing about the opioid crisis, but I really honestly wasn't listening. All I focused on was mere surviving. I had lost my job from a retail chain due to immigration issues, along with some 250 other pharmacists with varying degrees of uncertainty. To remedy this, I had to go the route of student visa to continue legally staying in the country. But this meant going through a grueling master's degree program, all the while earning a living as the sole breadwinner. So I had to go through that route while seeking an immigration sponsor through employment. In the process, I and my husband would drive. By the way, I didn't have a driver's license yet at that time. So he would drive me all over Southern California, wherever I could get a per diem job, both to survive as a family and to keep a roof over our heads. Eventually, we sent our children back home to our country because we could not properly care for nor supervise them. However, in the course of their stay back home, there was this unfortunate home robbery or invasion where both of them were stabbed by the perpetrator, with my daughter getting the brunt of it. But thank God, both survived, but the trauma was there. Daughter suffers from anxiety, depression, sometimes suicidal, also because of all the events in our family's life, not the least the loss of my job, and subsequently the disciplinary action on my license. All these were happening, and so I lost focus on being a good pharmacist. My husband also even lost focus in another important thing, that is his health. He ignored the growing tumor under his foot for those 2 years of our visa problems because he was the one taking care of the documentation and following up with the immigration lawyer. And just 6 months after getting our green card, or 2 months after he was allowed to work, he was diagnosed with terminal cancer and died a mere 6 months later. And however, in recollection, I cringe at the possibility of any consequence, injury, or even fatality that may have arisen from my professional negligence, lapses in judgment and ethics, or the inconsistencies in exercising my corresponding responsibility to ensure that every prescription for controlled substances be only for a legitimate medical purpose, all because I only focused on surviving or on my own family's welfare. So selfish of me. And I'm very sorry. Nevertheless, I was shocked and humiliated along with all sorts of emotions upon learning of the long probation period meted out to me. Not even done dealing with my grief from losing my spouse in late 2016, and barely 8 months later, here I was getting the notice of violation in mid-2017. Grief combined with fear of again losing my family's only source of income, my job as a pharmacist. This fear did come true when the retail chain where I was employed as PIC fired me. They alleged I violated company policy by not informing them of the accusation ahead of time. However, my legal counsel told me to wait until the final board decision came out, which I promptly did in November 2018. But in less than 2 months, and ironically, on New Year's Day, I was terminated. I know that the real reason, I think, was their fear of the board visiting their store because of me. So here I was, devastated and depressed, especially after the disciplinary action came into effect February 2019. I cloistered myself at home, seriously thinking of leaving the country for good, until my kind, compassionate, and wise board monitor or inspector, Dr. Catherine Sill, pointed out that with time, it will all pass, that I should just focus on being compliant with the terms and conditions of probation, focus on correcting my faults and mistakes. Thus, I started seeking employment but experienced roadblocks until I went back to a former employer during my days of per diem work. Dr. Paul Nguyen was the only person brave enough to employ me. Not even a close family friend who owns a pharmacy was willing to take a chance. One employer kept postponing my wages, even working for 3 straight months, driving 160 miles each day, and that without pay. Meanwhile, after a series of interviews, I was offered a job. This I got from online in New Mexico, though, to serve in the Indian Health Services. But in the end, the company's legal counsel advised against it. Not to mention that my probation requires that I practice in California. Thankfully, though, Dr. Nguyen had me start in one of his stores in the high desert in October 2019. He later assigned me to another of his store, but which was 70 miles away. I never complained. In fact, I subsequently moved to that area, so I wouldn't have to drive too far, I'm sorry. Sometimes braving snowstorms, just to make up the 20 hours minimum weekly requirement. Soon after, though, I experienced another setback. I had fractured my right foot, and had to have surgery, which set me back another 4 months in my probation. I know, when it rains, it pours, story of my life, but I showed determination to work, even going back despite still using a scooter to move around. And I thank my boss and the staff because they bore the brunt with me. Then shortly after, wearing a boot cast just so I could go back working. So yeah, along the journey, God had brought me certain people to encourage me to get up from my broken life and strive to correct my errors and mistakes. Aside from Dr. Nguyen's willingness to hire me, he also sets a good example as my supervisor and PIC by instituting, among others, a policy of communication with the prescribers via what he calls, or what we call, the pain assessment form, and also the controlled medication authentication form, where we ask the prescribers about each patient's opioid or pain management therapy and progress notes, if ever. I am a firm believer and frequent user of this tool. I believe it is a useful way to say to the prescribers that we pharmacists, as partners in the care management of your patients, we are serious and purposeful in our intent. Another person who has been instrumental in helping me correct my ways and try to give back to the community is the PIC at Taplos, where I also work, William Kurt Emick. Upon learning of the disciplinary action against me, he introduced me to his city council's initiative, because he is a council member, also was mayor of this city, the Coalition on Preventing Homelessness and Addiction. I was so enthusiastic. I immediately joined, and as part of the prevention committee, I pushed for an naloxone to be given also to lay persons who are in contact with addicts, not only the law enforcement people. I intend to be very active again in this organization as soon as activities resume. On my own, aside from speaking with the prescribers and our usual checking of cures, I now use the peer-to-peer messaging capability in Cures to notify prescribers about my observations. For example, if I see a patient pharmacy hopping or doctor hopping, I message the doctors. I also ask the doctors for, again, like the pain assessment form about the patient's pain management and progress notes. Also, somehow recommending reducing high quantities of opioids towards weaning them off, and more importantly, recommending naloxone. And I'm so happy that in just the 2 months, the past 2 months alone, and despite only being able to do this for some patients due to time constraints, I got positive responses. Either prescribers would send fresh prescriptions for Narcan, or they endorsed my own prescribing of the drug to their patients. One even thanked me for reminding him about it. I continue to adopt best practices that I learned from continuing education and remedial education courses. Networking, especially through my membership in the California Pharmaceutical Association, and my pharmacy journals and literature that I read almost every day. Most particularly the script, I also read that and make it a point to read it. Moreover, I have discovered that attending board meetings is undoubtedly a great source of information on how to be an ethical and competent pharmacist. Hence, I will endeavor to attend these meetings whenever I can. Most of all, I now know that if I have any dilemmas, doubts, or issues about my practice, I know I can confidently call the board and get help. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Magalit. I'll now have Ms. Trauma ask you some questions.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
The underlying accusation against you was for failing to exercise your corresponding responsibility in furnishing narcotics. Is that correct?
Yes, Ms. Trauma.
And
That's correct.
And you were a staff pharmacist at Riverwalk. Is that correct?
Yes, I was, Your Honor. I'm sorry, Ms. Trauma, but I want to point out that I was only working my 20 hours requirement, so I could still have my student visa. So only the minimum of 20, actually, yeah, I don't call it minimum, it's the maximum. It was the maximum at having a student visa.
Okay. You were never the pharmacist in charge there, correct?
Never, I was never a pharmacist in charge, yes.
Okay. What sort of controlled substance prescriptions were you dispensing that the board was concerned about?
I now know that most of them were the prescriptions that had the Holy Trinity. And even about the Holy Trinity, I learned only later after I had left that employment. So high quantities of oxycodone and or Norco, and then the Xanax and the Soma.
Is the Holy Trinity something you're aware of now?
Very much aware of now, Ms. Trauma. Whenever I see a prescription that shows the Holy Trinity, immediately I say no. In fact, we in the 2 pharmacies that I work at, we hardly stock Soma now. We recommend other muscle relaxers. And then on the Xanax, especially because I have had awareness of benzodiazepines as another big addiction problem. We also talk to the doctor and try to reduce either the strength or the quantity or both. So,
You stated in your petition that you did not think of the public's welfare when you dispensed excessive quantities of narcotics on questionable prescriptions. Do you believe that your conduct may have in any way led to illegitimate prescriptions for controlled substances being released into the public?
yes, definitely, Ms. Drama, and I am so sorry for that. I should have listened to my conscience because I was already starting on the second year of my employment there. I was already starting to notice, because I did not know that patients were paying cash. The layout of the pharmacy was that the pharmacist and the dispensing technicians were in a counter that there was a wall that was covering my peripheral vision from the cashier. And sometimes I was starting to hear like they were counting, but I was focusing so much on correctly dispensing. But eventually I did learn, and I did have strong suspicions about the payment of cash for these items or for these drugs. And that was when I started. I actually did not tell you also. I initiated a meeting with the owner. By then, the owner had started a second store, but I initiated a meeting to tell him that absolutely I will no longer fill those prescriptions. But the technicians were there for another ulterior motive. They wanted raises because they knew that the owner was getting so much money. But for me, on my part, I was thinking, no, I want just to tell him that this is wrong, so I don't want to fill those prescriptions anymore. He did say, okay, as long as you're not comfortable, don't fill. But the very next day, he would call me and ask, why are you not filling these and that, and why the delay? And I would tell him also that I needed to speak to the doctor, but of course, all my evidence was inconsistent. I only had a few evidence, so I just accepted the board's decision without question.
Did you feel pressure from the owner to fill these prescriptions?
I definitely did. I knew that he delayed my green card. It would have only taken 1 year, but he delayed the green card and took more than 2 years. I knew that. But as soon as I got my green card, that was October. By December, I already told him I'm leaving the company, and so you should find somebody to work for you. And then that's when I started looking for other jobs.
What does the term corresponding responsibility mean to you?
Corresponding responsibility means that doctors have the responsibility to give the right or prescribe the right medication to their patients with the right diagnosis. But it is the corresponding responsibility of the pharmacist to make sure that it is so, that it is true, and that it is for a legitimate medical purpose.
Now, you stated in your petition that you've become very conscious and discerning when dispensing controlled substances. How has your practice changed exactly?
Definitely. My current PICs, 2 of them, they know that I take so much time to verify these prescriptions. First of all, when I get a new prescription for um, uh, for for controlled substance, I scrutinize it according to the 14 points. If it's a written prescription, 14 points of the legitimate DOJ form, and when there is a doubt in me, I call the doctor. First, I also talk to the patients. I ask them about their symptoms, ask them about if they know their diagnosis and how long have they been on, basically talking to them, and then called the doctor. Um, anyway, we don't accept new prescriptions anymore for opioids that are high in quantity. If it's 30 tablets or less and they are from the emergency room or from urgent care, we do accept them, but I scrutinize it. I go to cures. I'm a heavy user of the cures. Um, and then I check for red flags. Basically, take my time to scrutinize the prescriptions.
Are you having a lot more discussions with prescribers about questionable narcotic prescriptions?
Definitely, Ms. Trama. In fact, some doctors are tired of me already, but they know I'm happy because most of the doctors in the local area, even if they're sometimes 30 or 50 miles away, I am familiar with them because I worked in the area 30 miles away also before. I worked when I was at the retail chain. And so they know me, and when I call them, they already know that I am verifying the prescriptions. And sometimes I even have the audacity to tell them, can we lower the quantities? Because we do have the policy now that we are only filling up to 120, but that is according to diagnosis and also after communication with the doctor. 180 is very rare anymore, very rare in our practice now and in my practice.
Are there times when even after a discussion with the prescriber, you haven't felt comfortable that the prescription was for a legitimate medical purpose?
Oh, yes, definitely. And I want to tell you a story about that. Up in the mountains, there was a prescription for promethazine with codeine and with an antibiotic. And I was thinking, well, the quantity was only 120. But upon checking cures, I saw that every month he would get, for 4 months, he gets the 120, sometimes 240 ml. So I said, it must not be legitimate. I tried calling the doctor, but it was during a Saturday. So I said, I will not fill this anymore. And I messaged the doctor about it. Honestly, I don't have, I don't remember if I got a response because I'm often also going to the other pharmacy, which was 70 miles away. So I would just work a day up there in the mountains and sometimes two, but yeah, I don't know anymore. But one very good result of that is my boss said we will no longer fill prescriptions for promethazine with codeine, although sometimes I'm not agreeable to that, but I still, really scrutinize and use my best judgment, professional judgment on what to do. So needless to say, I did not fill that prescription.
You
Because
mentioned
I saw in cures that, I'm so sorry. I saw in cures that he was filling from other pharmacies 70 or 60 miles away from us, although his address was in the mountains. So when I interviewed him, he had a suspicious demeanor. So I really said, I have to verify this with your doctor. And he never came back, to my knowledge.
You had mentioned in your testimony that you have begun using a form to communicate with prescribers. That form, though, you're doing that in addition to actually having a discussion with the prescriber, correct?
That is true. That is correct, Ms. Drama.
Okay. If the board grants your petition, how will you ensure that you're going to be compliant with pharmacy laws going forward?
Oh, from now on, I will always be on my toes about dispensing controlled medications. As I've said, I will scrutinize each prescription, particularly the new ones, and I would, mental blank. I would keep abreast with, outside of my practice, I will always keep abreast with the laws and regulations and what the goings on of pharmacy, of the field of pharmacy. I will be an active member of the California Pharmaceutical Association, so I can network with them, and I will know what is the ethical and competent practice of pharmacy. And I also want to continue with reading pharmacy journals and literature, aside from the script. And I want to attend the board meetings because that will keep me on my toes. Also, I want to always network with, aside from my PICs who are very ethical and efficient, I will network with my colleagues from my country who are also pharmacists here, and we share experiences and share about best practices. And that's basically it, Ms. Trauma.
Thank you. I don't have anything further, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Trauma. We'll now go to the board for questions. President O, would you mind going through and polling the board members?
Not at all. We'll start with Mr. Ricardo Sanchez.
Yeah, I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jason Wise.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Dr. Maria Serpa.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Magalat, I'd
Yes,
hope
ma'am.
that maybe you could speak a little bit to the significant request. I really appreciate your testimony and your information, and actually hearing it from you, sometimes seeing you, is helpful too. But from what I read, you were given 6 years of probation for some pretty significant issues, which you have addressed, but it looks like you've done less than 3 years of probation at this point. So it's a significant request that you're making. And so if you could speak a little bit to that, would be helpful.
Thank you. First of all, I believe I have done all I could to amend my ways and move forward as an ethical and competent pharmacist. And with all I have learned and continue to learn through remedial and other education courses, I know I am now a much better pharmacist, particularly in knowing where to turn to especially as to resources, who to consult with whenever I'm faced with a dilemma in my practice. And now that I know the best practices also with regard to the opioid crisis, I know I have started that level of vigilance already, so I will continue with that level of vigilance. Another reason, honest, is personal in the sense that I really need a full-time job, both to help launch my children to better themselves. Both of them have had depression and they have lost their drive. My son left college because he said he could not even make enough to survive, let alone think of higher education. I'm just thinking maybe I can just help them even with just a roof over their heads. We are all in different cities now, just renting rooms, each of us. We are all room renters. I lost my 5-bedroom house in 2020. So of course, that's a personal reason, but I truly understand the 6 years versus what I have done, what I have already accomplished. But I still ask for your mercy as a board, but I will, of course, accept whatever your decision is. But I need that full-time job.
Yeah, thank you. Just a follow-up, because I think that you
Sure.
really speak to what my question is in looking at your materials, it looks like maybe just to be able to find work, you've moved to a more rural location that is giving you a little bit of job opportunity. Are you saying that you would consider moving to someplace maybe closer to family or to better job opportunities if you weren't on probation? Is that a big reason why you're applying?
That is correct. That really is correct, because both my children are down the hill near the Los Angeles and the Irvine area. And one of the pharmacies that I mentioned that hired me but did not pay me is already there, meaning I believe a lot of the employers don't want to deal with the hassle of hiring a probationary like me versus those pharmacies that are in remote areas because they need pharmacists. So yeah, you are right, ma'am.
Great, thank you, and good luck.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Jessica Crowley?
Hello. Thank you so much
Hi.
for sharing some more clarifying elements to kind of describe what happened when your violations occurred. I did just want clarification on one thing, and I apologize ahead of time if I missed it, but are you currently employed?
Ma'am, yes, ma'am. I'm employed by the 2 pharmacies of Dr. Nguyen, although he later sold the first pharmacy, but they could hardly give me the 20 hours. I would just be happy if they give me more than 20 hours because one goes on vacation or goes on a day off. But it's really hard meeting the 20 hours every week. For example, 14 hours I do in Barstow, which is in the high desert area, and then I travel 70 miles again back to my home in mountain area. But right now, Dr. Nguyen wants to focus on his pharmacy because it's a rather small pharmacy now, and he wants to work himself there. He has another staff pharmacist there, so I'm really like I'm really redundant as a pharmacist there, but he does try. He really does try, and I really thank him for that.
Great. And is this is paid employment, correct?
Paid employment,
for about
yes,
20
ma'am.
hours. Okay.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
then one final point of clarification for that online program that you were taking. That isn't the reason why you're working 20 hours, correct? That's just because that's all that they have for you at that location.
I'm so sorry. Which online?
I think I remember you saying that at one point you had a student visa that limited you to working 20 hours. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, ma'am, but that was before I got my green card. That wasn't online. If you're referring to the classes, we had to drive all the way to Los Angeles for our in-person classes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I understand.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Jose?
No questions except, to let Ms. Magalit, just know to not lose hope. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Kula?
Ms. Margarita, we hear a lot of, quite a lot of hearings today, and I just want to say that I admire your ability to take full responsibility. I admire your resilience, and I admire your due diligence to do better and to answer the questions with specifics about how you're really trying to make sure that you don't repeat what happened before, such as really looking into cares and doing the due diligence of calling the doctors, even to the point where they might, be like, oh, it's her again. It speaks volume, and as someone, such as me personally, as someone who was raised by a single mom, an immigrant, coming to this country and really doing the best. And so I just want to, give you kudos for persevering despite all of it, and wish you the best of luck.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. I don't have any questions, but just want to say good luck. Ms. Magalit, back to you, Your Honor.
Thank you, President O. So, Ms. Magalit, before we conclude, I want to make sure you have no other documents that you want to be submitting with your petition. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Magalit. And you have no other witnesses besides yourself, correct?
That is correct, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. So at this point, if there's anything else that you would like the board to know when considering your petition, now is the time to share it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed members of the board, Your Honor, Deputy Attorney General Nicole Trauma, again, I come before you a changed person and for the better. I am now a more confident, ethical, and competent pharmacist because of all that I have learned via this probation. I especially appreciated the 3-day ethics course because it was an eye-opener that no matter how moral or spiritual you think you are, if it doesn't translate consistently into your everyday life, be it personal or professional, your religious or spiritual beliefs amount to nothing. I hope you see admission and acceptance of my actions having adversely affected people contributed to the opioid crisis, and I am very sorry for my part. If I could only turn back the hands of time, I would. Sometimes I think that I should just have accepted my and my family's fate and gone back to our country. But I also hope you see my sincerity in wanting to be the best pharmacist I can be, ethical and competent, as I have already started doing during this probation. However, sincerity may not be sufficient to ensure ethical and competent practice of pharmacy. I hope to see that I have presented evidence that I have remorse as well as repentance for what I did and allowed to happen before. Not only remorse, because that signifies mere emotion, but I have likewise repented, which involves action. I believe I have mended my ways and continue to expand my knowledge to act and to do what is right. If you do decide to lift my probation, I have even resolved in myself that I will designate that date of decision as my annual ritual of reading and imbibing the oath of a pharmacist, as well as the CPHA's Code of Ethics. I learned from the ethics course that it is always good to be reminded of my duties and responsibilities as a pharmacist, a very noble profession, but that it is a privilege with its corresponding responsibility. So I know this board's decision is not granted easily, but with great thought and deliberation. So I will respectfully accept whatever that decision is. And I just thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Magalit. At that time, this concludes the petition hearing in this matter. The case is submitted and the record is closed. We are off the record in this matter and will proceed to the next petition.
Your Honor, if we can take a quick 5-minute break, just bio break.
You read my mind.
We'll come back at 3:15.
Thank you.
Okay, Your Honor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, President O. Dr. Lloyd, I don't see you on video yet. It would be helpful if you could turn that on.
There I am. Now that you can see me, I don't know if that's better for you or not.
I'm not able to yet. Is this an issue on my end? Okay.
I also
We
cannot
cannot
see
see
him.
him either.
You see me now?
Oh, yes, I can. Thank you very much, Dr. Lloyd. Okay, is there anything we need to address before we go back on the record?
Your Honor, I have that he has counsel on this case, Ivan Petrozelka.
Okay. Yes, I recall
I'm sorry.
reading that.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Your Honor. My counsel's not here today, so I'm just representing myself.
Ms. Trauma, do we need a written or anything like that to address this? I haven't come across this issue yet.
I have never come across this issue either. I haven't heard from Mr. Petrozelka. I wasn't aware that he wasn't going to be coming today.
Okay. Well, I think if there's no objection from you or Dr. Lloyd, what we're going to do about that is have him make a knowing acknowledgement that he will be representing himself once we're on the record. Do you think that addresses any issues there?
That's okay with me.
Okay. And Dr. Lloyd, is that okay with you as well?
It's fine with me.
Okay, thank you. All right. We are on the record before the Board of Pharmacy, Department of Consumer Affairs, State of California, in the matter of the petition for early termination of probation filed by Clarence Lloyd, agency case number 4682, OAH case number 20220600201. My name is Jessica Wall. I'm an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings. I've been assigned to preside over this matter today. President O, could we please get a polling of the board members since we took a break to ensure there's quorum?
Sure. Maria Serpa?
Present.
Jesse Crawley?
Present.
Jose de la Paz?
Present.
Pula Koenig?
Present.
Ricardo Sanchez?
Present.
Jason Wise? Jason? Oh, we might have lost him. I don't see him.
Okay. Do we have quorum without Mr. Wise?
Unfortunately, we do not. So I
He
think
might be back. Let's
he-
give him a second. Mr. Wise, we do not see you yet. If you could unmute, we were doing a roll call to ensure that there was quorum.
I am here. Sorry about that.
Oh, there you go, Jason. Thank you, and I'm here. Back to you, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, President O. So we have a quorum of the board present. May I please take the appearance of the Deputy Attorney General?
Good afternoon, Deputy Attorney General Nicole Trauma, appearing on behalf of the people under Government Code Section 11522.
Thank you, Ms. Trauma. And Dr. Lloyd, I want to address something before we begin. Initially, you were represented by counsel, and it is my understanding that you wish to represent yourself today. Could you confirm that on the record?
Yes, that is true.
Okay, so you understand that you have a right to have counsel represent you, and you are waiving that right, choosing to represent yourself in this petition hearing.
That is correct.
Thank you, Dr. Lloyd. Okay, so could you please state and spell your name for the record?
My name is Clarence, Clarence, Lloyd, Lloyd.
All right, thank you, Dr. Lloyd. So before we begin, I'm going to give you a little bit of a roadmap of these proceedings because you're representing yourself. In this proceeding, the board is concerned with your rehabilitation since license discipline. First, we'll have Ms. Trauma present your petition and a background of the matter. Following that, you'll have an opportunity to make your presentation. I'd like to remind you that the board has had the benefit of reviewing your petition package, so you do not need to restate the items within it. After you make your presentation, Ms. Trauma will ask you some questions, followed by the board. At the end of the hearing, the board will go into closed session to deliberate. You will not receive a decision today. It will arrive in the mail. Do you have any questions about that, Dr. Lloyd?
I do not.
Thank you very much. So, Ms. Trauma, could you please present a background of the petition?
Thank you, Your Honor. We're here today on a petition for early termination of probation. Effective December 26, 2014, petitioner's pharmacist license was revoked following an administrative hearing. There were multiple violations of state and federal laws and regulations governing pharmacy, knowingly making a false statement, gross negligence for incorrectly labeling several chemotherapy agents, failed to maintain facilities and equipment, failed to properly maintain reports for compounded drugs in a collated manner, knowingly made and signed documents that falsely represented facts, failed to keep a record of master formulas, compounded and sold misbranded drugs, made and sold adulterated drugs, had unjustified expiration dates on compounded medications, and inappropriately exercised his education, training, and experience as a pharmacist. In that decision, the board found that revocation of his license was required because he could not be trusted to follow the law or act honestly. The ALJ made credibility findings that petitioner testified falsely on numerous occasions during the hearing, and that he continually lied, blamed others, and acted to promote his self-interest at the expense of his customers, with the highest example being his decision to continue to compound chemotherapy drugs when his hood was not certified and after he had been instructed by the board to stop. After the requisite waiting period, petitioner filed a petition for reinstatement. That matter was heard by the board on September 7, 2018. At that hearing, the board found the petitioner established he was rehabilitated, specifically that he showed remorse and accepted full responsibility for the conduct, that he demonstrated a change in attitude and rehabilitation from the actions which led to the revocation of his license. The board stated in its decision, a lengthy probationary period with carefully crafted terms and conditions will adequately protect the public's health and safety. Based on those findings, effective January 4th, 2019, the board issued a decision granting petitioner's reinstatement upon paying cost recovery from the prior decision in the amount of $28,492.50. Petitioner paid those costs and his license was reinstated on July 19th, 2019. The reinstatement was immediately revoked, the revocation stayed, and petitioner placed on probation for a period of 5 years, subject to terms and conditions. Petitioner has been compliant with his probation. He reported to the board on a quarterly basis, paid the probation monitoring costs, was restricted from preparing sterile compounds during the first years of probation and was compliant with that restriction, and he completed remedial education requirements. Petitioner told probation for 10 months from July 2019 to February 2020, which was 8 months, and then in December of 2020 for 1 month, and then again in June of 2021 for 1 month. Petitioner is requesting to terminate his probation early And with his instant petition, he has submitted continuing education certificates, submitted 13 letters of recommendation, all of which have been verified. He also submitted a personal statement. I'd now like to mark as Exhibit 1 the petition packet, which includes all of the documents described above that were attached to his petition, as well as the notice of hearing, the memo to the board, and the underlying decisions and order. The board members and petitioner have been provided with a copy of the same set of exhibits, and the redacted petition was uploaded to the OAH system in bays labeled AGO 001 through AGO 155. Request that be admitted. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Trauma. Dr. Lloyd, do you have any objection to admitting Exhibit 1 into evidence?
I do not.
Thank you. Exhibit 1 will be admitted for all purposes. So we now move to you, Dr. Lloyd, and before the board can consider your testimony as evidence, I need to swear you in. Can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you, Dr. Lloyd. So just a reminder, again, the board has had the benefit of reviewing your petition packet. You don't have to restate the items within it. What the board is interested in hearing is why you have filed your petition and why they should grant it. And with that, you may begin.
Thank you. So Your Honor, Deputy Attorney General Trauma, members of the Board of Pharmacy, first of all, I greatly appreciate this opportunity to appear before you and you're listening to my petition for early termination of probation. It has been a long 8 years. Some of those years have been painful. Some have been involved suffering, mostly because the suffering I caused to my family by not being able to be employed. There was, at this point, I can see there was purpose in the suffering I went through. I was placed in a situation where I was enabled to, first of all, guide and help form new pharmacists who are about to enter the profession by telling them about my experiences. And because I was on probation, I was involved with volunteering at certain institutions. And I feel volunteering at the nonprofits has been transformative to me. Because of that, I have rearranged my priorities as a pharmacist. I have a new focus to my purpose in pharmacy, and that new focus has given me joy, and I like myself a lot better now than I did before I was placed on probation. I feel like I am rehabilitated. I know that is a question paramount before the Board of Pharmacy. And to explain why I think I am rehabilitated, and I would like to explain part of my journey the last 8 years, which has, because of that, I think I'm a different person and a different pharmacist than I was in 2014. When my license was revoked, and I take full responsibility and accountability for the actions which resulted in my license being revoked, I was despondent. I was also very concerned because I realized there was something very much missing in me, both as a person and as a pharmacist. And I needed to find out what that deficit was and address it properly. The first thing I did was to enroll in an ethics course at the University of Santa Clara at the Levy School of Business. I wanted to take this class because the Levy School of Business is recognized internationally for the business ethics courses and utilized by many Fortune 500 companies. I enrolled in 2 classes. One was business ethics. The other was ethics in the corporate world. I learned a lot from that class that I took to heart. What I used from that class was one that every decision I make, both personally and professionally, I need to go through an ethical decision-making questioning of myself. I also learned that professionally, everything I need to do, I need to not only be ethical, but I need to document everything I do professionally. and to be completely transparent. So not only am I ethical, but it's apparent to everyone working with me or supervising me that I'm behaving legally and ethically, and there's no question about the manner in which I'm working. After I finished the classes, I came home and I really thought about my work as a pharmacist, trying to find out what was missing in me in my work as a pharmacist. I came up with 5 deficits that I needed to address. If I have time, I'd like to enumerate those 5 deficits. The first one was that I needed to always be completely to understand all of the pharmacy laws, regulations, and statutes which govern the practice of pharmacy in the state of California. Second of all, I needed to do everything I could to be completely compliant with all laws, regulations, and statutes which govern the practice of pharmacy in California. Third, I had to make a promise that I would always be completely honest with the Board of Pharmacy. Yes, be completely honest when it is painful, when it may be painful to be completely honest. We have a common purpose, those pharmacists working in California and the Board of Pharmacy. Purpose of a pharmacist is to improve the health, wellness, and quality of life of patients in the state of California through the practice of pharmacy. The purpose of the Board of Pharmacy is to ensure the safety of the life, of the health, wellness, and quality of life of the residents of California who utilize a pharmacy. With that common purpose, there needs to be a partnership, and that partnership is based on truthfulness. I then realized that a deficit I had was I needed to document everything I did as a pharmacist, from the standard operating procedures and the policies and procedures, which hopefully are being well used, to my invoices, to my filling of prescriptions, both the ethical decision-making I use as well as the legal decision-making I use in terms of filling a prescription and my decision whether or not to fill a prescription or not fill that prescription based on ethical and legal decisions. And finally, I needed to be more transparent. And if I follow the rules and regulations, if I'm completely honest with the Board of Pharmacy, and if I document everything I do, it should be I should be transparent enough that it's easy and would not take much time for any board inspector or any other inspector from the agency has purview over the profession of pharmacy to come into where I work as a pharmacist. And it should be apparent that I'm working ethically and legally without question. So that is what I took away from my ethics course with the University of Santa Clara. Shortly after I completed those classes, I was asked to deliver a series of lectures at the University of Southern California School of Pharmacy. In each of those lectures, I addressed the 4th year class who were currently taking a class in pharmacy law. The topic of my lecture was pharmacy law and ethics for pharmacists and its relationship to the Board of Pharmacy. In each of those lectures, which I was addressing pharmacists who were finishing pharmacy school and about to embark on the profession of pharmacy, I talked about my experience as a pharmacist, and I was painfully honest and detailed in what happened to me, what behavior resulted in the revocation of my license and why. And I took them step by step, the process of what I did as a pharmacist, what the inspector found in my pharmacy, the allegations against me as a pharmacist and my pharmacy, the process of going through and having the 4-day hearing, the judgment that Administrative Law Judge Meth made regarding me personally and my conduct as a pharmacist, and the decision of the Board of Pharmacy revoking my license, the ramification of having your license revoked, And really briefly on the process, if you wanted to be reinstated, the painful steps of going through those steps. My purpose in talking to these fourth-year students was I wanted to make it extremely clear that how easy it is to lose everything in terms of being a pharmacist by not conducting yourself ethically and legally in the profession of pharmacy in California. Excuse me 1 second. I impressed upon them that they should have enough pride in themselves. And what they have achieved, they had the greatest education of any pharmacist who had preceded them. Their opportunities as a pharmacist, the scope of practice for a pharmacist today is greater than any pharmacist before us. And they're allowed to do things that we only dreamt of doing, and to have enough pride in themselves to kind of conduct themselves ethically and to strive to be example of the highest standards of ethics in the profession of pharmacy in California. I then challenged them to make a promise to themselves. I asked them to make 5 promises to themselves, which corresponded to the 5 deficits I had as a pharmacist. To understand the laws, regulations, and statutes of practicing pharmacy in California. Not only to understand them, but to strive to be perfectly compliant with them. To always be honest with the Board of Pharmacy. To document everything they do as a pharmacist. This is especially true with the corresponding responsibility that we have now. And to be perfectly transparent in everything they do. As much pain as I was going through at the time, I was gratified that within that pain, I was able to find something positive to give back to the profession of pharmacy and to help the newest practitioners of pharmacy in the state of California. Before my license was revoked, my wife and I had started a process of being professed as lay members of the Franciscan order, the secular Franciscan order. We had started that process, and after 3 years of study and formation, we were professed as lay members of the Franciscan order. Now, as lay members, we do come under the direction of the bishops of the 3 major orders of the Franciscans. The purpose of a secular Franciscan is to live our lives as Francis of Assisi would do had he been alive in the year 2022, and live our lives accordingly. Our motto as secular Franciscans is to go out and exemplify the gospel to others. I found that very appealing. That it's not just knowing the gospel or preaching the gospel. No, it's to go out and exemplify the gospel, which is a message of love, mercy, forgiveness, and service to others who are in need of service. I was attracted to the Franciscans because, unlike other orders, they don't congregate together in a monastery, but they go out into society. They live in society, they work in society, they build relationships in society, and they serve others in society, those who are most in need. That description of a Franciscan, I thought, sounded very similar to a community pharmacist, and I was immediately attracted to that. After becoming professed, I felt like I had a mission as a community pharmacist to go out into the community and practice to be examples of the gospel and to serve those others who are very much in need of help. At the time I was being professed, Cardinal Bellagio from Argentina was elevated to becoming Pope. When he became Pope, he chose the name Francis of Assisi, as an example of what he thought his mission was going forward. I thought that was very timely, since I had just been professed into the order, secular order. was very instructive. The first thing he did as Pope was instruct all of us, that we needed to go out to the periphery of society and tend to those who were most in need. So with my new mission, I thought about how we're doing that. And then I realized I live in Southern California. When I leave my front door in the morning, I don't have to travel very far to reach the peripheries of society. The peripheries of societies are now in my backyard, and the people who need my help are everywhere, and that population is growing. After becoming professed into the Franciscan order, I was approached by both the founder as well as the CEO of the Precious Life Center in Los Alamitos to ask if I could volunteer time with them. The Precious Life Shelter is a homeless shelter for pregnant women. Women who are homeless, find themselves pregnant, and have already made the decision that they want to complete their pregnancy and give birth to their child. The Precious Life Shelter gives them shelter as food, medical care, but beyond that, they also give them life skills, such as parenting classes, nutrition classes, fiscal responsibility courses. And they asked me to come in and address these women with a once a month 90-minute course. The class was called Ask the Pharmacist. Many of these women have lived very unstructured lives, which involved not only homelessness, but spousal abuse and drug abuse. They had many questions about how drugs work, drugs they had been taking, what it does to their body, what it might do to their child. And they asked me to come in and just have a conversation with them. And that's basically, it wasn't a lecture. I gave them a 90-minute lecture. My 90-minute conversation, where we discussed their questions, trying to empower them to take control of the problems they had through the education that I could provide them as a pharmacist. A few months into providing these lectures, the CEO pulled me aside and asked me if I could also address vaccinations. And this was before the pandemic. Many of the women had elected not to become vaccinated, and they're electing not to vaccinate their children. And could I please explain what vaccines are and how they work and what the benefit of the vaccinations are? And I did that. My work continues at the Precious Life Shelter. I've developed a good relationship with the women there, a lot of trust. We have very frank conversations. And I'm gratified that I can use I consider my education as a pharmacist to be a gift. And I've given the opportunity to share that gift with women to improve the quality of their lives and the lives of their children. I was particularly happy that after several months of these lectures, I was informed that the vaccination rate amongst the residents of the Precious Life Shelter had gone up dramatically for both the residents and their children. And that gave me a great deal of satisfaction. While I was volunteering at the Precious Life Shelter, I had heard about the Lesternac Clinic, which is a free clinic in the city of Orange. I really liked the Lesternac Clinic. I think it's a wonderful place. It's rather unique in that they don't accept any payment for any of the services they provide. They don't accept cash, insurance, Medicare, Medi-Cal. No individual, entity, or agency is billed anything for any of the work performed at the Lesternac Clinic. And the clinic is open to all and anyone who walk up. The patients are seen quickly. Their medical problems are addressed, and if they need specialty care, they receive specialty care. I'm not aware of any specialty care that's not available there. And the clinic has gone on further to offer wellness programs to the diabetic patients who are at risk of serious complications of diabetes. I applied for work there as a volunteer, and I was hired there as a volunteer. I'm going to get to this, but I feel like my work at the Lesternac Clinic has been transformative for me. My first job at the Lesternac Clinic was to support telemedicine. Some of the physicians didn't feel comfortable always coming into the clinic, so they would interview the patient like we're doing WebEx or Zoom. After an extensive interview, they would write their physician's notes and any prescription and transmit it to the clinic. As a pharmacist in the clinic, I would get this report and prescription, and I had the luxury of pulling the patient's chart and going through the patient's chart, doing a drug utilization review, looking at all the lab work, previous physician's notes. If there was not a problem, I would put my notes into the chart and the prescription would be called into the pharmacy. If there was a conflict of any type, I would note that in the chart, bring the chart along with the prescription and the problem, as well as my suggestion for resolving the problem, to a practitioner in the clinic at the time, and the problem would be resolved. I did this for a number of months. And then the pandemic hit. And it was quite literally the worst pandemic I had experienced in my life. And I wanted to do something about it. And as a pharmacist, I was abundantly aware that from the president to the governor to the local health departments, there was a plea for pharmacists to get certified to give vaccinations, particularly the COVID vaccine. I took a class and was certified in administering vaccinations, and I applied for employment with 2 national chain pharmacies, which were asking for pharmacists to administer the vaccine, and I was hired by one of those pharmacies. Throughout my month-long training with the company, I kept informing them that I had an affidavit that needed to be signed, that I couldn't work for them without the owner and the pharmacist in charge acknowledging that I informed them of my probationary status at the Board of Pharmacy. Throughout the training, I was assured that wasn't a problem. After the training, we were being assigned sites, and I again pointed out I could not work for them without having that signed. And after that, I was informed I couldn't be employed because I was on probation with the Board of Pharmacy. I was extremely upset about that. However, the chief executive officer of Liston Free Clinic approached me and told me that the clinic had planned on administering COVID vaccines, and would I consider expanding my role to include administering the COVID vaccine, which I did. I did that on an ongoing basis, and I continue that today, with the one exception of 4 weeks over December and January, where I was employed by an independent pharmacy in Calexico, California, 1 block from our border with Mexico, where I was hired to prepare the COVID vaccines for others to administer because I'm not bilingual. That pharmacy administered 500 vaccinations a day, and that we accomplished that at least for the 4 weeks that I was working for them. After which time I returned to Liston Clinic, and I continue administering COVID vaccines today. I estimate that during that time, I have personally administered in excess of 25,000 vaccinations to our patients, and I get tremendous satisfaction from that. This last year, as I said, the Liston Clinic started offering wellness program to the diabetic patients, to not only those in Orange, but to their satellites around Southern California. They'd come to us, and it was a series of scans. Each patient receives a retina scan, a cardiovascular hemodynamic test. They get an ultrasound of the carotid artery and their thyroid. The very last step is a test for peripheral neuropathy. When they started this wellness program, I went to the chief executive and told him I had actually been trained to perform this preliminary test for peripheral neuropathy in the feet. Years ago, I had taken a certificate program from the Texas Pharmacists Association on how to build a diabetic clinic in a community pharmacy, and part of that curriculum was how to properly administer neuropathy test, peripheral neuropathy test on a diabetic patient. I've been doing that for this last year and continue to do that. Um, as I stated before, I have found my work at a Listernac-free clinic to be transformative. I'm going to try to articulate why. When I work at the Listernac clinic, I'm freed of all the other distractions. I'm freed of the distraction of worrying about competition with other pharmacists in the community. I am freed from the distraction of my own reputation as a pharmacist. And along comes freedom from my ego and my arrogance. I'm freed from concern of making a profit. I'm freed of all of that. When I work at Listernac Clinic, there's only one focus, one singular focus, and that is the individual sitting in front of me who desperately needs my help. And my sitting there with the gift of my education as a pharmacist and my experience in trying to help that patient. It is not unusual at all that I examine a patient who reveals that up until that day at the Listernac Clinic, they had never seen a healthcare professional in their life, and they're middle-aged. I'm finding I do come across peripheral neuropathy and other problems, and I know I'm able to address those problems. If they're not aware they have that problem, I inform them of that. If they're aware they had that problem before they came in, they assume that's a normal part of human aging, and the consequences is a part of human aging, and there's nothing that can be done for them. And I'm able to inform them we can do something and we can save the deleterious effects of diabetes. And I refer them to a physician and podiatrist who can address those needs. My focus at the Listernac Clinic is very, very simple. It is entirely focused on the individual in front of me who needs my help and my ability to help them at that time. That focus is very simple. I have found great beauty in that simplicity. As a result, I feel like I have rearranged the priorities I have as a pharmacist. And quite frankly, I am much happier with myself when I work with that focus. I'm extremely grateful to the Listernac Clinic first of all, allowing me to come in and work with them knowing that I was on probation. I appreciate their confidence in me. I appreciate them increasing my scope of practice as I have been there. And I will forever be thankful of the new focus that I have found and the happiness I found in that focus. Finally, last November, I was invited to join the board of directors at the St. Francis Center of Long Beach. The St. Francis Center of Long Beach is a homeless center. It's been in downtown Long Beach in the poorest zip code of greater Long Beach. A great deal of homelessness there. They've been there 50 years offering food and clothing. When I asked why they wanted me on the board of directors, they gave two reasons. One, I'm a pharmacist. And two, they knew I worked at Listernac Clinic, and they were very much aware of the Listernac Clinic. So I agreed to be on the board. I've been on the board of directors since last November. The St. Francis Center, as great as it is, been around for 50 years, has an existing problem. Before the pandemic, they were informed by the city that they needed to do a major remodel of their building, which is a very low-income area, servicing both the homeless and those on the verge of homelessness. They raised the money, they started the renovation, and the pandemic hit. After the pandemic, the building wasn't finished, they didn't have enough money, and they found out their contractor had left the state. So the first question I had is on the board of directors was, we still have an obligation to serve the homeless community and those on the verge of homelessness. What can we do without our building? I propose the idea of let's have a health fair, knowing that the population we serve quite often falls through the cracks of the healthcare system, since a lot of them don't have Medicare or Medi-Cal and can't afford it. And no doubt that population need to be served. I thought it could best be served with a health fair. I secured a property near the St. Francis Center at a church with a large parking lot and a hall that we could use. And I leaned on my relationships in the healthcare community. Of course, I went to Lesternac Clinic, and they're very gracious and suggested we do this on July 9th, which is right around the corner. They have mobile units they're bringing to our site. Every patient that comes into the health fair will be seen by a primary care physician, and if need be, can be referred to specialty care. They bring in a mobile unit which has a complete dental lab on it, so that patients come in can get a dental exam, fillings, and tooth extractions while at the health fair. They have another mobile unit where patients come in and get a full eye exam, and while they're waiting at the health fair, they pick out a pair of glasses. The prescriptive lenses are made for those glasses, and the people walk out of the health fair with a prescriptive pair of glasses specific for them. I solicited Walgreens, and they're going to provide COVID vaccine for 150 doses of COVID vaccines. And the local pharmacy school is American University of Health Sciences, who can provide their faculty and their students to administer the COVID vaccines. I solicited the help of my friends at the Orange County Pharmacists Association, who are going to be doing diabetic screenings here with blood glucose tests. And of course, St. Francis Center of Long Beach will be providing food and hygiene necessities for people who are homeless or on the verge of homelessness. As you can probably tell, I take a lot of pride in this, that just using my relationships and my understanding of the health care system in Southern California, I'm able to bring something positive to the community. I named it purposefully the first annual St. Francis Center Health Fair, because I hope to develop an ongoing relationship with these other healthcare professionals, Lesternac Clinic, the pharmacy school, Walgreens, Orange County Pharmacists Association, where we can perform this healthcare on an annual basis. I'd like to have it later in the year where we could also offer the flu vaccine at an opportune time. But this is not a one-day commitment. As far as I'm concerned, it's the first day of an ongoing daily commitment to service those most in need, those on the periphery of society in Long Beach, the homeless and those who are on the verge of homelessness. I take great joy in knowing that we're doing that. So I come to you asking you to take a look at what I've done since my license was revoked. I feel like I'm a different person. I feel like I'm a different pharmacist. And I feel like because of the situation I was in, I've enjoyed the relationship with these nonprofits, volunteering my time. And through working at these nonprofits, I have changed as a pharmacist and as a person. I've reprioritized what's important to me as a pharmacist. I have found joy in working with a singular focus. And I know the question on your mind is, am I rehabilitated? Do you feel safe in removing the restraints on my license so I can practice pharmacy? And at this point, all I can do is leave you with one promise. And that is a promise I asked the pharmacy students to make in my lecture at USC. And for what it's worth, I give you my pledge and my promise. I will always be aware of all of the laws, regulations, and statutes governing the practice of pharmacy in California, particularly the new ones, which are published in the script. I promise to do everything I can to be completely compliant with all the laws, regulation, and statutes governing the practice of pharmacy. I give you my promise I will always be completely honest with the Board of Pharmacy and the representatives and inspectors. I promise to document every decision I make as a pharmacist. And I pledge to you I will always be transparent, so it's always obvious to you or any inspector that encounters my work as a pharmacist, that I'm working ethically and completely legally under the purview of the State Board of Pharmacy.
Thank you, Dr. Lloyd. If there's nothing else in your statement, I'd like to ask Ms. Trauma to ask you some questions.
Please do.
Good afternoon. Part of rehabilitation is acknowledging your wrongdoing, right?
Yes.
Your pharmacist license, your sterile compounding permit, and your pharmacy permit were all revoked following a multiple day hearing in 2014, correct?
Yes.
And in your petition, you stated you were disciplined for intentionally using a sterile biological cabinet hood that you knew was uncertified, not following Board of Pharmacy rules and regulations, and not being truthful during the hearing. But you were also found to be grossly negligent, correct?
That is correct.
And making false statements and submitting false documents to the board, correct?
That is correct.
You had multiple sterile compounding violations.
Correct.
And one of those sterile compounding violations was extending a beyond use date because a doctor asked you to, but you didn't actually have any testing for potency or stability studies to back that up. Is that right?
I don't remember. Honestly, don't remember Deputy AG Trauma.
Okay.
I have no memory of that. I'm sorry.
Do you recall bacteria growing in your clean and ante room at the pharmacy?
I remember growing outside the ante room.
In your petition, you stated you were disciplined for intentionally using a sterile biological cabinet that you knew was uncertified. But at the time of the hearing, you actually wouldn't admit that it wasn't certified, would you?
Can I answer my question? My failure originally rose from lack of documentation, transparency. I admit during the hearing I said something that was incorrect, but it's much more. I guess my answer goes beyond truthfulness. It goes beyond. The problem was much greater than the truthfulness in that the way I was working as a pharmacist, I did not document things well, and led to lack of transparency. So yes, I gave a false statement during that hearing. Does that help?
Well, I would like to go into that a little bit because it was a pretty big part of the hearing, if I recall.
Yes, it was the basis of the conclusion of the administrative law judge, yes.
That you had testified that you didn't know that your hood had not been certified and that the certification company didn't tell you that, when in fact the certification company did tell you that, and a rebuttal witness had to come in and testify about the conversation that you two had had about it. Isn't that right?
Yes, that's true.
Okay. You provided,
I don't contest that at all.
And in fact, you had gotten angry with him because you didn't want to shut your pharmacy down and you wanted to continue to use your hood and compound chemotherapy drugs.
During several conversations with him in the pharmacy, I had lost my temper with him, yes.
So you admit you weren't truthful when you were testifying under oath at that first hearing?
Yes.
Why did you lie to the court under oath?
I thought the situation was more complicated than was presented. I also admit I'm trying to choose the right words. Can you give me a second?
Of course, take your time.
I felt that everything was being said wasn't true, but at the time, but in retrospect, I should have been more aware, and the facts should have been available to me more easily. And I regret my arrogance and my anger at the time of the hearing and previous to the hearing, my anger towards that individual. That was It's much more complicated than just deciding to lie. I had a pattern which built up to that, which is why I examined the 5 deficits I had, and why I had the pharmacy students pledge that they wouldn't repeat what I did. I think I had a problem. The problem was much bigger than just that. And that's what I addressed after taking the ethics classes. I gave a great deal of thought about that. And so I'm not contesting anything you're saying. I guess I'm frustrated with myself. The problem was much bigger than just that. Does that make sense?
The problem is much bigger than whether or not you're honest.
No, that led up to that's my statement, which was not true.
But there were other statements that you made during that hearing that were false. Right?
Yes.
So looking back on your actions, both that led to the revocation, don't you think that the board came to the right decision in revoking your license?
Well, I don't contest that at all. They came to the right conclusion.
When you reread that decision, how do you feel about it now?
I'm disgusted by it. By mine, not by the ruling of the board or the judge, Judge Meth. I'm disgusted reading about my actions.
After your revocation, you had a period of reflection, a change of attitude. Is that right?
Correct.
And I believe you stated that after your license was revoked, you were free of distractions of income, pride, and reputation.
We're working at less than that clinic, yes.
And were those driving focuses when you were licensed?
No, my pride was in my product. So as I said, I've rearranged my priorities as a person, an individual, and most importantly, as a pharmacist. My pride now comes from being a pharmacist where it's transparent that I want to strive for the highest ethical standards, and I'm documenting that I'm doing that. And the joy I have for taking care of the individual in front of me. Those are my priorities right now.
Would you say that patient safety is one of your priorities?
Absolutely.
Did you end up selling your old pharmacy?
I closed it.
In your petition, you talked about lectures at a shelter that you were providing in 2017.
Yes. The Precious Life Shelter, yes.
Okay. Is that the same as the Ask the Pharmacist program?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So in 2017, you weren't actually licensed as a pharmacist, correct?
No, but I checked. I got legal advice that I was not performing something that required a pharmacist. It required someone with a background in understanding microbiology and healthcare. It did not require the work of a pharmacist, and therefore I could go ahead and volunteer my time there. I was just talking to the ladies about healthcare.
And the administrator knew that you weren't licensed as a pharmacist when you were doing this Ask the Pharmacist program?
Yes, I made that clear to her the day she asked me to volunteer.
Mm-hmm. And then your license was restored in July of 2019, correct?
Correct.
And is that when your probation started?
It started a little bit. It took me a while to come up with the money to reimburse the Board of Pharmacy. And so I think closer to June is when I came up with the money and I was officially placed on probation.
Okay. And then you were ordered to serve 5 years probation, correct?
That's correct.
And then you had a period of tolling from July of 2019 to February of 2020. Was that because you couldn't meet the minimum work requirement during that time period?
I'm sorry, what were those dates?
July of 2019 to February of 2020. Is that because you were having a hard time?
I'm sorry. That's because I could not find employment. Yes.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And you think your difficulties in finding a paid position were because you were on probation?
That's what I was told.
But do you think it has anything to do with potential employers reading that prior decision with all those violations and the credibility findings?
I don't know. I can just tell you what they told me.
Okay. The board stated in its decision that a lengthy probationary period with carefully crafted terms and conditions will adequately protect the public health and safety. Do you feel like you've served a lengthy probationary period at this point?
I believe I have. I know it's been, I haven't completed the 5 years. It's been a while since I was placed on probation, but I've only worked as a pharmacist for a short period of that. I feel like I'm a different pharmacist right now. I feel like the organizations I'm working for have trust in me, have faith in me. At one particular place, they expanded my scope of practice and trusted me to administer the COVID vaccines, as well as the diabetic neuropathy screenings. So to answer your question, yeah, I think I'm rehabilitated, and I feel like I can be trusted to go out and work as a pharmacist without the restraints of the probation.
Has this been a humbling experience for you?
Yes, it most definitely has.
Has being on probation made you a better practitioner?
It has, and as I tried to say earlier, because I was on probation, I volunteered in situations I normally would not have chosen. In retrospect, that was the best thing that could have happened to me. I don't want to reiterate because I know time constraints, but as a result of that, I reprioritized what was important to me as a pharmacist, what was important to my patients. I have found a singular focus, which is one of the best things that happened to me. Focus where the only priority I really have right now is looking at the patient, the individual in front of me, and using my knowledge to try to help that patient with a problem. And I like who I am with that focus, and I'm happier than I've ever been as a pharmacist.
In your petition, you stated the years of having a revoked pharmacist license and then being on probation have negatively impacted my life on many levels.
Yes.
How has being on probation negatively impacted your life?
Well, I've not been able to earn an income since I was placed on probation, which has had a very negative effect on my family, my ability to support my family, my wife, and my children who are living with me. And so that's been the most painful thing, is not being able to support my family with an income.
Now, do you see yourself becoming a pharmacist in charge again?
That isn't my goal, no.
Do you see yourself owning a pharmacy again?
It would have to be a very rare situation where I would consider that. I feel like I'm kind of being guided in a certain direction towards these nonprofits, with the homeless shelter for women, the free clinic, the St. Francis Center, which asked me to be on the board of directors. So I do ponder what is my future in pharmacy. I'd like to find a way to earn an income and still support this community. I feel like it coincides with both my faith and where I'm being directed and where I find my greatest joy. To answer your question, to be perfectly honest, I can't tell you what I'm going to do as a pharmacist. I have a broad background. I've managed pharmacies in community, long-term care, acute care, clinical trials, and compounding. And to be perfectly honest with you, I'm applying for jobs in every one of those areas of pharmacy. If a pharmacy calls me and offers me a job and I think I can do it, I'm probably going to take that job because I need an income to support my family, which is different from what I'd most like to do as a pharmacist. What I'd most like to do is continue taking care of this community. My wildest dream would be if I could open a pharmacy near the St. Francis Center of Long Beach, 341B facility for the indigent. That would be my ideal. I don't know if I'll ever have that opportunity. I certainly don't have the financial resources to do that. So that would be my dream job. But to answer you absolutely truthfully, I need someone to offer me a job so I can earn the income to take care of my family.
Do you see yourself going back into sterile compounding?
It's not my first choice. No, I don't want to do it now, but I may entertain in the future would be not compounding, but preparing a sterile drug in a sterile environment. Only if it was the right situation. If there was a free clinic that had a surgery center that needed a prep, I'd consider that. I think I could do it, but it's not something I'm pursuing.
I don't have anything further. Thank you.
President O, if you wouldn't mind polling the board members for questions.
Sure. Jason, do you have any questions, comments?
No, thank you. None at this time.
Thank you. Maria?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Jesse?
I guess a point of clarification. I was kind of under the impression that nonprofit in that realm was really your goal. And first of all, I do commend you for all of the work that you've been doing because it's outstanding. And I think it's a testament to the fact that probation does work and can help rehabilitate pharmacists. So you should be very proud for giving back. But I guess that last kind of interaction confuses me a bit because you do want to find, of course, money doing nonprofit work, but you're applying to all these other pharmacies. So I'm just confused as to what your primary goal is coming off probation, whether it's to make money in the nonprofit realm or if it's just to get a paying job. If you could just provide some clarification on that.
Certainly. So I have a necessity to earn an income.
Of course.
To that end, I look for pharmacist jobs available and I apply for those jobs. I only know of one job I'm going to be applying for this week that is at a nonprofit and pays a salary. So I feel like I'm being directed towards working at nonprofit. I am searching for a job that will pay me to do that. But until I do that, I have to earn an income somewhere. So I'm applying for a lot of jobs.
Great. That helps. Thank you so much.
Okay. Kula? Sorry, Jose?
No questions for me.
Thank you. Kula?
No questions.
Thank you. Ricardo?
I have no questions.
Thank you. And I don't have any questions.
Thank you, President O. So going back to you, Dr. Lloyd, I want to confirm two things. So I want to confirm that all the documents we have in your petition packet are the totality of the documents you wanted to introduce today. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. And I'd like to confirm that you don't have any witnesses testifying on your behalf.
I do have a witness I asked. He's the Chief Executive Officer of Listernet Clinic, who asked to testify on my behalf. He couldn't stay for the whole meeting, but he's going to try to come back at this time. I'm hoping he's available now. His name is Ed Gerber. He's the Chief Executive Officer at Listernet Clinic. And I hope he's there. He's been busy at his clinic and had to leave. I hope he says he's going to try to come back. Checking my
Okay. Let me see if our moderator sees.
Oh, I see him.
Okay.
There he is.
All right.
I'm the ugly guy at the bottom.
Thank you. Is it Dr. or Mr. Gerber? What is
Just
your
Mr. Gerber.
Okay. All right, Mr. Gerber, before the board can consider your testimony as evidence, I need to swear you in under oath. Can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you. Can you please state and spell your full name for the record?
Sure. My name is Edward Gerber, Edward. Last name Gerber.
All right. Okay, so Dr. Lloyd, you may ask Mr. Gerber some questions.
Actually, he just said he had, if I'm correct, he had a statement he wanted to make. Ed, do you have a statement, or do you want me to ask you questions? How do you want to do this?
I can just talk if you'll give
All
me
right.
a couple minutes.
You got it.
I just want to make the comment that when Clarence started here, he started doing the med reconciliations. And to be absolutely honest with you, I wouldn't have let him done any more than that. Because he just didn't look like a happy individual. That was about the extent of what I would have given him to do. And he did a fine job with it. But I noticed over time as he started getting into it, so to speak, and interacting with the doctors and starting to work more with the clinic, that he stopped shuffling around and he started walking around. And I know that seems like it's not a big deal, but to me it meant a lot. I mean, he was getting self-confidence back and he was starting to act into the profession of the pharmacist. So in time, then the pandemic hit. Clarence went and got the classes to do the injections. And when other individuals ran from the pandemic and hid in a corner, Clarence did not. And I have to commend him for that he stood tall in hell and dealt with that. So I am forever grateful for the work that Clarence did during COVID to come in when everybody was in white Martian suits and masks and continued to provide the services that they did. And then when we started doing the diagnostic days, not only did he have the background, but we also worked with a podiatrist to make sure they were in sync with doing the foot exams. And now patients are getting that. But when I talk to Clarence now, he is not the guy that started here a couple of years ago. So I just want, from viewing him on a regular basis, to say that, yes, I have seen that growth in Clarence coming from somebody that really hated life to now enjoying life. So that's all. I just wanted the board to know from somebody that works with Clarence on a regular basis that I have truly seen that transformation of him coming out of his self-pity. I don't know what other way to say that. Sorry. So that's kind of all I had to say.
Okay, Dr. Lloyd, do you have any more questions for Mr. Gerber?
No, I do not.
Ms. Trauma, do you have any questions for Mr. Gerber?
Just a few. Mr. Gerber, are you a pharmacist?
No, I am not.
Do you hold any kind of licensures?
I am the CEO of the clinic, so no, I have an accounting licensure, but that really doesn't do much benefit here. So.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying. What is your understanding as to why Dr. Lloyd is on probation with the pharmacy board?
Well, for all the things that you stated in the beginning. So when he started, he presented to us all the documents from the board, all the documents from the court hearings, and he didn't try to trick me. Which I deal with a lot of doctors on probation, nurses on probation, and he was up front and gave me all those documents that I read through. And his probation officer actually reached out to me as well. So, I was fully aware of all the things that Clarence had against him. And that's why I said in the beginning, I wouldn't have given him much more to do than just review those charts. I mean, I wanted, he had to prove himself to me before I let him do much more than just chart reviews.
Understood. Thank you. Nothing further.
Thank you. President O, could you please poll the board members to see if they have any questions for Mr. Gerber?
Okay, we'll start with Maria.
No questions, thank you.
Okay, Jose,
No questions, thank you.
Jesse,
No questions, thank you.
Kula,
No questions, thank you.
Ricardo,
Yeah, no questions.
thank you, and Jason.
Yes, could you please tell me when did he start working at your clinic?
Oh, I want to guess it was about a year, 2020. I don't have the dates in front of me, but it was before COVID hit. I think it was about a year before that, 8 months before that. So
Okay, thank you.
that's the best of my recollection. I'm old and gray, as you can tell, so.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Mr. Gerber.
And I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, President O. So, Dr. Lloyd, if you have any additional questions for Mr. Gerber.
Oh, I do not.
Okay, thank you very much for your time here today, Mr. Gerber. You may be excused.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Lloyd, we now go back to you. So if you have any additional witnesses besides Mr. Gerber.
I do not.
Okay, so this is now your opportunity to provide any additional testimony you would like to the board. Since you're still under oath, this is kind of your closing remarks for your petition.
First of all, again, I thank you very much for this opportunity to plead for early termination of my probation. I wouldn't come to you this time if I didn't feel like I'm a different person than I was in 2014. I think I'm a better person, a better pharmacist, and I feel like I'm rehabilitated. The reason I'm asking for early termination is I need to get an income, and then even though I think I needed an income, I wouldn't do this if I didn't think I was ready. So I ask you to consider answer the question: do you think I'm rehabilitated? Do you think it's safe to allow me to work in an environment where I don't have the restrictions on my license? And I very much thank you for this consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lloyd. So that concludes the petition hearing on this matter. The case is submitted and the record is closed. We are off the record in this matter. And as this is the final petition, I will leave it to Dr. O about whether we take a break or go directly into closed session.
Okay, so we are going to go as soon as we can to closed session. We're going to go I'm going to thank members of the public who observed or participated in the meeting today. Members will now proceed to closed session. As indicated on the agenda, the board will convene in closed session to deliberate on disciplinary and other matters. As indicated on the agenda, members will reconvene in open session to adjourn the meeting in open session. That portion of the meeting, however, will not be broadcast due to technological limitations. No board business will be conducted. Thank you all for participating today. Members will begin closed session in 3 minutes. We will be terminating the WebEx now to allow members to convene in closed sessions.